small, but that's okay. First year students are welcome here. I will say too, we got some seats up front. Those of you who are standing, we got some seats up front. If you want, there's a couple. Are there a couple seats in the middle too, or not? Yeah, we'll move things out of the way here. Yeah, we can. We'll come back and do more food later.
And if you didn't get a handout, because there are 3 handouts to have gotten for everybody, there's a 4th one for biochem people. If you didn't get them, they are going to be emailed to you later on. This will also be recorded, like the screen and the audio, so it'll be posted to our YouTube channel. Again, you can go to that later. It will be emailed out, so feel free to go back and watch this.
All right, so it looks like one more seat up here. There's a seat in the back. Can we move one? Yeah. This is going to be great. Well, I'll tell you, it's actually probably one of the first sessions everyone's going to be here for. But thank you all for coming, and thanks for being here. I'll just stand over here, right? Be close to the mic. So yeah, we wanted to get everyone together and go through some of the ideas of the whole prelim process, make sure everything was set. There are some changes this year. The grad studies committee has been working diligently for the last year, trying to make some changes, make some improvements. I should say there are some improvements this year. We're hoping that everything adds clarity, everything makes it easier for you to do, to know what's expected, and go from there. Dr. Barty's here as well. She may correct me at any point. She hasn't corrected me yet, so this is good. So as we go through stuff and sort of help make sure that the plan is all there. So you've got some handouts. We've got some more up here which you can grab later on. You've got some handouts. It includes the new catalog language. So this document that looks like this is what the new the new handbook, when it comes out in August, is going to look like for the prelim exam. You'll notice it's 5 or 6 pages. There's quite a bit more information there about what our expectations are. Dee brought this to me this morning. This is our old one. It's a page and a half. So part of the change, a big part of the change, has been to try to add clarity, to try to add more context, to try to make sure that you are more clear about what the exam is and what you'll be needing to do. Does that sound good? Okay. Let's see, how does this work? So going through some stuff here. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right. Oh, we're the wrong way. There we go. Okay. Keep going down. There we go. Okay. So first question, are you ready to take a prelim? That's right, that's good. So we're just going to check, will you be ready to take a prelim? So this again, this is something that typically happens in the fall of the 3rd year. So all of you who are 2nd year students, this is something that's going to be coming up over the next several months. The basic requirements that you need to have done are up here. Basically your plan of study, your coursework needs to be done with an approved and completed plan of study. Hopefully, if you're 2nd year, most of your courses are done. If you're still looking at a course for next fall and going on, talk to us, we'll work it out. So these are the questions, right? Do you have all your courses listed? Is your plan of study correct? We know we asked you to submit a plan of study near the end of your 1st year, right? And those of you who are 1st year students, it's like right about now. We know that sometimes changes. So if there was a change to your plan of study, please talk to Dee or Jordan and make sure that gets all settled. That potentially includes changes to who is on your committee. So make sure that all gets changed, make sure everything is set and ready to go. And then the other requirements to be ready to take the prelim are completion of the cumulative exam requirements. That's all you rising 3rd year students, current 2nd year students, completion of the cumulative exams, or then completion of the foundational course requirement for all of your 1st year students. So when you come around again in a year, that's what we're going to be looking for. If you have specific questions about you with any of these things, talk to us. We'll work through it. So now are you ready? Yeah, no, it's still not. I want to talk about the general purpose of the prelim exam and why we have it, and then we'll go through some of the details. So this is a graduate school exam, right? This is one of the 2 big exams that the grad school requires you to do, the prelim exam and then the final defense at the end. The prelim exam here is the formal examination. It's an oral examination with an examining committee. That committee usually is going to be the same people as is your advisory committee. And it's to evaluate whether or not you've gained these foundational knowledge and skills to be able to go forward and earn a doctoral degree. So all of the stuff that you did up to that point, the cumulative exams, the coursework, right? Once you get to the step of the prelim and done with that, that should all be done. And we're evaluating and saying you're done with the stuff, you're ready to go. All that's left is the research, and now you're going to be doing that, creation of knowledge, which is the PhD. over the next year or two. So then, yeah, after you pass the exam, you'll be considered PhD candidates. You can write that on your email if you want a PhD candidate. And then all that's left is working on the dissertation. So it's a big step. And because it's big, that's part of why we have you all here today, because it's a big step. And also, it's a step that's going to take several months to go through. So from now through mid fall. There are two main components of the exam. One is the OP, the original proposal. Sometimes around here, we know it's sort of sometimes confusing. We just say, yeah, you'll take your OP. The OP is only part of the prelim exam. But one is the OP coming up with the original idea and then presenting it. And the other then is a research check. So this is a chance for you to get together with your committee in a formal way and make sure that your committee sees what you're doing, gives you the feedback that you need, make sure that you've got what you need going forward so that you're ready after the prelim again to jump into full-time research and just keep going to degree. Okay. Some updates and changes, right? So Sam promised that there were changes. There are. We did a survey a couple of years ago. We asked all of you, or not you, but people like you, very much like you where you are, about your perceptions of the process. And this is what we got. Was primarily people were really unclear about exam expectations and what this exam looked like, what you needed to do, what you needed to do when, how different did it need to be from your research, how detailed did it need to be. All of those sorts of ideas of expectations could be unclear. So a big part of the changes were, again, working with the faculty, getting them all on the same page. And this was Dr. Bright's job, was to get all the faculty together, so that's always a challenge, right? But getting them all on the same page to say, this is what we want to do, so then we can get you all on the same page of, here are the expectations of the prelim exam. So that's why the document that you see, it's a lot more detailed than it used to be. And that's why we've stressed a couple of things, that are up here. So central goals, understanding the expectations, so we've got that there. Meeting the rigorous standards of our program, and part of that is understanding and clarifying what the learning objectives are for this whole process. So those are now also listed in the document that you have, and also in the handbook. This is what we're trying to get out of this whole process, and these are what your learning objectives should be. And then try to make something that's more fair, valuable, and productive. So part of the changes that you'll see here are also giving back more feedback, right? So this is not just a chance to have a hurdle that you have to jump over. It's also a chance to have more meaningful interaction with your committee, more meaningful feedback as you go forward, and giving you the things that you need. Sound good? Okay. Here's the big page. What do you need to do? And by the way, we'll send this out, so you can write it down now if you want, but they'll all be there too. But what do you need to do? There will be 6 sort of deliverable documents or presentations or things that are part of this whole prelim process. 6 big things. The first one is your second year annual report. You'd be doing this anyway, right? Every year you do an annual report. This comes in August. For the second year report, it's a little bit different because it begins this prelim process. So in the second year report, written document, due end of the summer, which is why we're getting you here together to begin to make plans for it. And you should do, as part of that, a research summary. Where are you? What is your research project? What have you gotten done so far? Where are you going? Those sorts of things. It's a 3-page document for the second year report in the DAX communication style. Your advisor can help you with this. Your groupmates can help you with this, to sort of understanding what that looks like. But it's a 3-page report, and then, this is the key thing, you'll, with this, receive some feedback from your committee about that. You do that anyway with the annual report, but we just want to sort of make it clear that this is a chance for you to say to your committee, here's what I'm doing, here's what I think the research is going to be, and for your committee to say back, yes, looks great, yes, think about this, yes, here's some suggestions, whatever. So this is the feedback point with this 3-page due in August. That's good. Second thing, this is new. So this is one of the 2 parts of this that is new, is a 1-page specific aimed on the OP part of the prelim. So this is not on the work that you're doing, not your research work, but what I'm proposing for the OP part of the prelim. We're asking you in August, at the same time as the annual review, to submit a 1-page document that says, this is where I think I'm going to go with this. We don't want to make this like new work. Our goal here is not to give you all sorts of new assignments and new things to do. Our goal here is to give you feedback. Our goal here is to have you think further ahead. So you think, here's what my idea is going to be. It's a sort of a pre-proposal. You turn it in, your committee sees it, and they can give you feedback saying, yes, you're on the right track, this looks great. They can give you feedback saying, yes, but maybe it's a little bit too close to your own work, you might want to move in a slightly different direction. They can give you feedback saying, this is way too big or way too small, or whatever the feedback is early on in the process. We'll talk just a little bit more about exactly what that looks like, but that is, just so you know, that is, we acknowledge this is the new thing, and we hope it's useful to you because it's going to provide more feedback before you go really deep into writing the OP. Due in August, so due in a couple of months. The third thing is your prelim document. This is not new. We've always had this. This is turning in your actual OP. This is the what you think it's going to be. I'll talk in more detail about it. Due 2 weeks before your exam date. So this is probably, for most of you, your exam date will be sometime in the fall, September, October, November, or comp day. So 2 weeks before that is when that'll have to be done. Also at that point, when you turn that in, your committee is going to ask for a dissertation research summary. This is an extension to what you turned in up here in part 1. So it's not a full new document. It's just between August and October. Is there anything to add? Is there any updates? Is there any new data? Is there any new direction? Is there anything new to go? So that at the actual examination, when it comes there, the committee is really fully up to date with everything that you've done and with where you are. So yeah, so the prelim here, as necessary to provide research progress after part 1. Thing 5, first 4, 1 through 4 are all here with written. 5 and 6 are going to be oral presentations. So thing 5 here is the OP presentation. This is the exam. This is where you go in, you present your idea, you're there for questions, you've got your slides like we have here, you've got your talk, you're ready for the committee to challenge you on things. And we'll talk with details about exactly what this looks like, but it's going to be about 20 slides. And the disciplinary expectations may differ, which is part of why later on today we've got faculty from each of the disciplines to sort of talk about what the expectations are for that presentation. And then the second new part, at the same meeting, so you're at sort of second separate meeting. At the same meeting, you'll have the required research assessment, which is an oral presentation of 1 in 4. It's an oral presentation of where you are and what your research looks like. And again, it's a chance for your committee to be right there with you, to talk through it, and to give you feedback. There is some guidance in the document that I handed out on sort of how long that's going to be, but we're looking at something about a 20-minute presentation, so you should sort of think of conference presentation. This is you presenting your research and sort of the scope of conference presentation. It's not a full seminar. It's not a full thing. It's a relatively confined in part of the 2-hour examination period. We know, so again, this is added on. We're not trying to add more stuff to you. We're trying to make it more clear. We're trying to also give you more feedback. And we also know that many people in the past have done this anyway. They were ready for it. They sort of gotten the word. Got to be ready in case your committee asks you about your own research. They may have had slides and things there, and then they may not have gotten to it. I think Sam's told the story that she had it ready to go and just didn't do it. Didn't get there. We want to make sure that you do get there. We're telling your faculty that we want to make sure that they do get there. So they're expecting this too. And they, even can like sort of cut off the conversation on the OP if it gets long enough to say, hey, we need to stop this and move on to talk about the research assessment and see where you are in research. So, oh, right. Come here.
So the point of this bottom thing here is that this is something that people have always done. It's just that you didn't get to present it, so it was basically a waste of your time. So now you are still going to do it, but now you have the chance to present it and to get feedback from your committee. So it's not extra work, it's just you're actually getting to show the work that you put the time in for. So that's why we're calling it this, and that's why we're having it now.
All right, sound good? Okay, I'm going to go through each of these 6 things now with a big slide with lots of words on each of them. But again, just sort of pointing out a couple of things, and we'll move on. And we'll make sure that these slides in a slightly different version are available to you. That's what Dee Dee just told me, is that I'm working here off of an old set of slides. So there's gonna be some weirdness later. Maybe it's like, it'll be fun. Okay. So, where to begin? Second year report, this is what you're thinking about, hopefully, right now. Right? Because it's going to be due in August, which will come faster than you think it is. The things that you're thinking about right now, again, you've got your 2 parts, your research stuff in the JAX style, in the 3-page JAX style, and the 1-pager sort of pre-proposal of what you think your OP is going to be. So we're doing this again to encourage you to prepare early. We're doing this again also to provide you with a new tool to assess your idea for the OP so that you can get feedback from the faculty. Right. Yeah, and then again, complete your OP by the first week of August.
The annual report.
What's that?
The annual report.
The annual report, sorry.
By the first week of August.
First week of August.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the, sorry.
Can I interject real quick? If you're a first-year student who is taking the exam or your OPs early, you still need to do the second-year report instead of your first-year annual report.
Correct. So that's actually, I'm going to change that just a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah.
So I should have said this at the beginning. So in all of this stuff, I talked about the timing of things. I'm assuming people who do sort of the standard timing, which is taking the exam in the fall of the 3rd year. If you're a first-year student planning to go early, if you're a second or third-year student needing to go late for some reason, all of these steps will need to happen, but they don't necessarily need to happen exactly at the same time frame as here. Talk to us about that for you. But I think what Dee Dee was getting to is if you're a first-year student planning to take the exam early, as in fall of 24, then yes, this year's annual report is going to have that exact paper. If you're a first-year student planning to take the exam early, as in spring of 25, which is still early, then you're probably going to have an additional report at some point. We'll make a date so that you've got that 3-page JAX communication so that your committee can review it. Does that make sense? Is that right? But something like that. Okay. So you got this. So this is nothing new. Again, the second-year report, the second-year research report, summarizing where you are, setting your research goals, 3-page format, citations in ACS style, conclusion of the report, brief selection on the future plans. This is the document of where your research is going so your committee can give feedback. Also, this is something that you can certainly work with your advisor on. Your advisor may want to see it before it goes to the committee. Your advisor is going to be very closely related to it, as they are with everything related to your research. And then the 1-pager, the specific aims 1-pager. Just the purpose here, really is highlighted. It's to help you for preparing the OP. It's to help you get started early. It's to help you get feedback on the idea that you have before you get too deep into writing it. I mean, we have seen cases, we see them every year, where people get to their OP exam, it's the first time their committee sees the document and they're like, what is this? We really wish we would have been able to talk to you 2 months ago to help you figure it out. So that's the point of the 1-pager. Okay. Next step, scheduling in front. So Jordan is here too. So make sure you listen to everything Jordan says about the scheduling and getting things ready. You should begin discussing your timeline, exactly when you're going to be looking at things at the beginning of the fall semester or even earlier. So this is like in the next couple of months. Begin to talk to your advisor, begin to talk to your committee about what your plans are and when you might need to schedule. It is very difficult sometimes to get faculty scheduled. Talk early, make a plan early so you've got everything set up and ready to go. The deadline to complete the prelims, and this is a hard deadline by the graduate school, is December 10th. Please don't even get close to it.
It's a little later, but
This one's 11th on the handout.
I say 11th because if you try to schedule your OP on the 30th or 13th of December, it is likely not going to be approved in time. Because not only do you have to defend your preliminary exam, but you also have to get approval from your entire committee, and faculty don't always move quickly.
What?
I know, it's so weird. You don't have to nag them at all to approve forms ever. And the departments and the grad school. So don't wait until the 13th or 12th or whatever.
Yeah,
12th.
so maybe this is like the take-home point of this, is do sometime in December, don't even go to December, right?
Yeah.
Be early, be on time, be thinking of doing this exam in October or November, that's probably gonna work the best for everyone.
Actually, I'm gonna disagree with that
Oh, okay.
because as much as I care about you guys, I don't in comparison to people who are graduating. So they have to be done before December. So if it's like the option of doing it prior to December or whatever, because if you look around, there's a whole bunch of you, okay? Which means faculty are gonna be crazy busy, okay? And I have already warned my graduates about you guys, or my candidates about you guys, because I want them to get done. I prioritize them over you. Eventually, I will also prioritize you guys. But, so I'm actually by and large, most of you guys are gonna be before December. But if you're doing it like whatever, if that's the only option, if you're like, you guys are competing, I'm okay with stuff in December, but that does put you at a risk if you fail, okay? And you're looking at like maybe a conditional pass type of situation, you won't have time to actually pass that before the semester ends. And that matters because if you don't pass by the end of the semester, that limits you for when you can graduate, okay? You have to graduate, if you want to graduate December 2025, you have to pass your prelim by December, by this December. And maybe right now, that might not seem like, that's so far away, I won't be ready. What if you get a really fantastic job and then you all of a sudden you really do want to be ready? So, anyway.
So Jordan actually jumped ahead a few slides there.
Oh,
But
sorry.
that's okay, that's okay. Because it's, again, important to know the deadlines and make a plan for how it's gonna work for you. So then, once you're there, once you've scheduled the date with your committee, once you've got everything ready to go, once you've also done your one-pager and you've got some feedback from your committee, and you're like, this is where to go, and we've got everything set, your document again is due 2 weeks before the date of your exam. Please be leaving a little bit early from that, shoot a little bit early from that, but 2 weeks to Jordan. Jordan will then compile it all and get it onto your committee. Fair enough? Okay. Here's what the document looks like. And actually, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this is a lot of part of what the different divisions are going to do with the faculty talk about what should the document look like. But it's going to be, first thing before you start, ask your PI, talk to people about divisional expectations, listen to the things that happened today from the faculty about divisional expectations and what the document looks like. But this is going to be basically what it does. I mean, it's a research proposal. So a statement of the problem hypothesis, some background information of where it's coming from, what the proposal is, what you're going to do, why it's significant, how you're going to do it, and all of those are in there, and what is going to be accomplished by the project. So it's a hard question, but this is what you should be thinking about. And again, this is what you can include some of these things in that one-page document that comes in August and get feedback from the faculty about where it's going. Okay. It should outline a full research program. It should not include an extensive review. There's a limited amount of space, so this is not just a literature review. This is a proposal of work that you're going to be doing. And then there's some recommended formats here. And again, this is something where you can talk to your advisor, talk to your group mates, talk to the division, listen to the faculty speak later today about exactly what formats should be good. But you can do something along the lines of an NIH R21 or NSF proposal, something along the lines of a proposal, right? That gives you a structure for what it should look like if you look at what actual proposals do when they're proposing to do research. Here's a guideline for the length, 10 to 15 pages double spaced or 8 single spaced. Don't go way over, don't turn in a 50-page document. This should be relatively concise. Also, don't turn in a 2-page document. This should be relatively complete. Okay. And then your dissertation research center, right? This was item 4 before. This is along with sort of, again, this is the bit that adds on to your second year report, adds on whatever research you've done since then to make sure that your committee is up to speed of things that happened between August and October, November when you take your exam.
And I just want to say that this should not be like a very long document, right? Like, it's only a couple months of research, and you've been doing your OP part of the time anyway. So like, we don't need a novel. We just need like you know, maybe a page or something on how you've addressed points and like what you've been working on. So this is not like a super long document.
At the exam. So now we're moving on here. Again, on the day of the exam, first thing, you're gonna sleep. Rest, breathe, have some breakfast. It's all important after breakfast. But then the day of the exam, arrive early for your setup, check to make sure your AV is working. If you want to, we can help you check out the room in a couple of days before the exam, probably at an unusual time, right, when it's not being used. If you want to pre-check the AV equipment and make sure everything is working there. Yes, sir.
One of the rooms does not like laser pointers. Like the screen literally will not show a laser pointer. So just a warning. That's why you need to check the room early.
Which room is that?
It's the one next to the main office. That screen literally will deny a laser
Yeah,
pointer.
because it's a TV. It's
Yeah.
not like a screen.
So that's why you got to get there early. That was the room I had in mind.
And then again, as you plan the whole thing, you're going to be looking at the OP presentation. It's going to be the start of it, and then followed at the end with this required research assessment. That's where you talk for 20 minutes or so about your research work. During that time, I think it's the next slide. It's not, yeah. During that time, yes, there it is, the next slide. Anticipate being interrupted during your presentations. Anticipate your committee asking you questions, asking you clarifying things, perhaps probing at things or challenging things. Anticipate that. You can think about what some of the questions you might get are, so you're prepared for that a little bit. You can also anticipate that you won't know the answers to all the questions. That happens, and that's okay. Just the fact that you don't know the answer doesn't mean you automatically fail. The faculty are there to challenge you a bit, right? They're there to see how it goes, or they're there to poke at things. So that's okay. Anticipate you might not know the answer to everything. Would you agree with that, Susan?
Yep.
And then again, the required research assessment. This again was part of one of the new parts, and the faculty will know this too, so they will be prepared for it. And then someone along the lines would say, "No, it's now time to do this." Plan for this near the end of your 2-hour exam period. In a space of about 20 minutes, providing an overview of your research. This is a presentation of your research. It looks like a conference presentation in the sort of timing. You can imagine like 5 minutes of introduction, 10 to 15 minutes there of the main projects and accomplishments, and then some time for discussion of future plans, including questions from the faculty. Do that. Does that sound good? Ready for after the exam? Yes, we're ready. We're ready for after the exam. Okay. After the exam, things that you can expect will happen include the committee might meet with you briefly right after the exam and tell you the outcome. This is where this is great. I want to highlight the outcomes. I want to come in and highlight what the outcomes might be so that you know going in what's expected. This is also in the handbook that it's there. There are 3 potential outcomes. There's pass. What up that one? Right. If they say pass, then you're done. They'll sign the formal forms and go on to the graduate school. The graduate school will formally recognize you as a PhD candidate. You go home and you celebrate that everything is good. There is fail. Hopefully that won't happen very often. But there is fail. That is one potential outcome. You should know this is when the committee believes that the PhD student is not ready for candidacy. There's something more that needs to happen. If they choose a fail, the committee will also at that point choose one of 3 options sort of to go from there. And they're listed here. They might recommend removal from the graduate program. That's really super uncommon, but it could happen if it's really clear that you're not ready. They might recommend a transition to a master's program. So say, hey, I think you need to move from PhD to master's, and then we can work through that. What's most common in this case is the third option, where they recommend continuing the PhD program, potentially with conditions. They might say we need you to do these things to continue in the program, potentially with conditions, and then with an option to take the prelim exam again. So that may happen. Just sort of prepare yourself that may happen. What's most common with the fail again is that option to take the prelim exam again. If they do that, if your committee chooses to do that, you'll need to take the prelim exam in the next, or a later semester. You cannot take it again in the same semester. That's a grad school rule. So it either then be in the spring or perhaps even beyond that, summer or fall later on. And you should be aware that graduate school only allows 2 formal attempts on the prelim exam. So if you do have a fail on the first time, you're coming around to the second exam, this third option goes away. And then a failure in the second time even means leaving the program or switching to a master's. Again, not common, but we want to make sure you all are aware that that's a possibility. And then the third thing down here is what we're calling undecided, or people also call conditional pass, or conditional fail, or conditional result, or whatever. Undecided, what the committee is saying there is that there are some issues, minor issues, but significant issues, if you can be minor and significant, that need to be addressed before they can make a choice here. To be honest, frankly, it's before they can say pass. There's some things that need to be addressed before they will say pass. If that happens, they're not going to tell the grad school anything. This is why we're not calling it conditional pass, we're calling it undecided. They don't fill out the forms, they don't tell the grad school if the exam is over, it just continues for a little while. The department expects that committee then, in fact, to give you written feedback to say, this is where the deficiency is, or this is where the issue is that we need you to address, to give you a timeline for addressing it, to say, we'd like to have this question answered, or this data figured out, or whatever, within 2 weeks, to give you an expectation for how you're going to relay that back to them. We'd like this to be in 2 weeks in a written form, in an email, we'd like to meet again, whatever it is. And then, when that all comes together, then at the end, then the committee will look at it again and make the decision to go back to one of these two options to get to the grad school university. Yes?
So the most common reason that we give people undecided is because we feel that something wasn't addressed in their original proposal report. So if we feel like maybe they didn't think about a specific issue and we want to see them think about it and write more, or perhaps if we've uncovered a flaw in the proposal and we want to see how you would get around this flaw, this is generally when we do an undecided. And so, like Dr. Hoffman said, we usually tell you what we want, how long it should be, and when it's going to be due by. And then the student will email that out to their committee, and then the committee will make a decision together. And then we will decide to either pass you, we're happy with it, or we can kick you up to the previous fail category and say maybe have you continue in a PhD program with conditions or something like that.
Does that sound good? Okay. Again, we don't mean to scare you, but just to be honest, this does happen. I will say again, I think I said this already, but I'll just try to make you feel better again. When we do have this undecided case, it's almost always there that the committee is looking for you to fix something so that they can move you to pass. Right? And they'll be very clear with you about what needs to be fixed, what needs to be addressed, how and when to do it. There's one rule here, though, and this goes back to Jordan's comment a while ago, there's one rule that this conditional, that is undecided, by grad school rules, has to be clarified by the end of the semester. So if you defend your OP on December 11th, you've got a day to fix a problem if there is one. If you defend it in October, you have whatever time your committee gives you, usually 2 or 3 weeks. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay. Then within 2 weeks of the exam, your advisor will set up a meeting to further discuss things. This is going to look different in probably every different case. This may be a formal meeting. This may be an informal thing. This may be your regular monthly, weekly meeting, whatever you have with your advisor. But there should be some sort of follow-up. In fact, there should be some sort of follow-up afterwards, just to say, yeah, this is how it went. This is, how what we saw, and then we're moving forward with this and everything. Right. Again, trying to give you the feedback as we go along. And then we're also, after the exam, a big part of the reason why we sort of increase the amount of the research work that's happening in the exam is that we want to help you continue your relationships with the other members of your committee for the next several years after you finish the prelims, right? So keep that in mind too, that's going to be an expectation that you can expect, that you can keep going back to your other members of your committee, giving them updates of things that are happening, asking them for advice, asking them for help in understanding things. If you're running into them in the hallway because they've seen your research work and that research presentation, they're going to know better what questions to ask you about how things are going. The committee is there for you going forward. It's not, we do see sometimes, and we really don't like this, right? We don't like situations where someone sees their committee at their prelim and then sees their committee again 3 years later at the final exam. Right.
That's usually what happens.
And that happens. We're trying to avoid that from happening, so you all have the opportunity here, because you brought the rest of your committee up on what you're doing, to keep that conversation going with them in whatever form you need, formal or informal, over those 2 years. Okay. Yeah, we are at 11:50. Before we open this for a couple of questions here, I'm just going to say, and maybe Sam was going to say this too. Sorry, 11:40.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so I'll go to the next slide that has it. Sort of how this works from here on. The room is full, and again, I apologize to the people who understand. Again, we have a lot of first years coming, so we expect it to be great to see a full room. For the next hour and a half, we've got faculty from the different areas presenting sort of what's coming up for their area. You don't need to sit here for 6 of them if they're not your area. So you're free to come and go as you like over the next hour. Actually, for the rest of it, you're free to come and go as you like. Although try to be quiet coming in and out. But definitely see your research area. If you want to see 1 or 2 others, that's good too to get more perspective. If you've got a faculty member up here that you really think is great, you want to see what they say because they're always so insightful, come back for that one as well. And then come back at 1:15 at the end here. We'll have 5 people who've been through the process and survived up here to offer advice and answer questions that they have. So, in the minute that I have before Professor Laskin takes over, I went the wrong way.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Oh, in the 3 minutes that I have before Professor Laskin takes over, any questions for me or for Dr. Barton? Yes.
Why did you decide to make the change this year if they were working on revamping the OP for what sounds like a long amount of time?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so the reason, this is something that we've wanted to do for a while, but I think what really kind of precipitated these changes was the fact that, so we have some other committees here in the department besides grad studies. So we have a mental health committee, which is headed by Betsy Parkinson. And then the diversity committee, which one of the people that runs that is Shao Lonam. And so Betsy and Shao came to me and they said, listen, like, there's a lot of problems with our current OP system. It's not equitable. Like, it really taxes students and really affects their mental health. Like, we have these ideas for changes that we can use to, like, make the whole process better. And so that's really what kind of started it, right? So the first thing we talked about was learning outcomes. Like, why are you guys even doing this in the first place, right? And so we put those in the grad handbook. And then Shal and Betsy wrote a proposal about, some of the other changes that they thought would be good based on student feedback. And so from that proposal, we took that to grad studies, and grad studies has spent the entire school year, like, going over this proposal and refining it and discussing it and trying to figure out what would be the best for students. So that's really what kind of precipitated these changes, and that's why they're happening at this point.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there was some student input into this as well?
Oh, yeah. So we have student input on the Graduate Studies Committee. So the head, one of the co-chairs of GSAB is also on Grad Studies. And so Stephen Sharp, right? Yeah, so he was the student rep this year, and he gave us a lot of great advice about what students would want to see and how to best communicate these changes.
I also want to say, and I realize that at this moment right now, I may not feel like this, so I have to use myself, right? That we didn't try to add a bunch of new stuff. There are some new things here, but the new things there, when they're here, the goal is to help you, right? We try to add things, to add feedback, and help us in the process. And then we added a bunch of new words to try to make clear the things that were already there. This is one of the things that we definitely clearly heard from students, clearly heard from faculty, is that there are a lot of unwritten rules out there in the world about how the OP works. So a lot of these changes were to try to make that clearer for you. So that's part of why we sort of felt comfortable. I realized you're like halfway through the process. This isn't what it sounded like when you came in, and now all of a sudden it's changing. It's hopefully not changing that much, and the changes that are there hopefully are helpful to you. That was the goal.
I was gonna say, a lot of this is actually kind of already stuff that was expected, like with the research presentation, like Steven said, I didn't get to do mine. But I already had the slides, I was ready to present my research. So it's basically just having you put it down on paper, effectively, is what's happening. So, yeah, we're out of time. Like they said, feel free to email them with any of the other questions. Go find them in the main office, that sort of thing.
And
So.
Stephen, are we sticking around if people have questions?
Yeah, we'll be around. We'll certainly be around at the 1:15 session with the students. If you got questions, then unless you all don't want us here, but yeah, we'll be around or find us. We want to answer your questions.
All right, wonderful. So yeah, if you want to shuffle out, feel free. It is nice to stay for multiple DRGs, but I understand it's a long session, so. There's all the chairs. There's all the chairs.
Well, I mean, yeah. It'll be fixed.
Oh, I have a clicker if you want to use it. This is the forward button.
Okay.
If you can stand closer to the computer, great, just for audio. But
I don't like having the projector shine into my face.
yeah.
I didn't get one of the handouts.
It will be emailed.
Okay, did we just run out of them?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I think.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
we're 40 people today, so.
Yeah, just as a side note, again, if you didn't get one of the handouts, they will be emailed to you. So just expect that. But all right, I think we're going to get started. We're going to get started so we can keep this going. All right, so next up we have, hey, thank you. So next up we have Julia Laskin. She's going to talk about analytical. So please give her your full attention.
All right. Well, good afternoon. This is really exciting to talk about the OP in the analytical division. I kind of heard through most of what Stephen got to tell you, so it's really great, a great introduction. Actually, for analytical, there's not a lot of changes. And we indeed expected you to give research presentation. Now it's the committee that will be actually forced to listen to you, okay? So I think it's a good news, okay? So these are generally key points that we care about for OP. You have to demonstrate that you can be an independent researcher and you can come up with an idea and come up with a solution to a problem. So you have to demonstrate that you can evaluate a piece of literature, right, or a body of literature in the field that you're interested in, and identify knowledge gaps and propose some solutions. You work your idea from the beginning to the end, and you communicate it properly to your committee. So in principle, the questions, most of the questions are driven during the OP, at least in the analytical, are driven by curiosity and not the desire to poke you and see what you know and what you don't know. And so with that, but we're curious scientists, okay? So we have a lot of questions usually. So just keep that in mind. The passing rate is generally pretty high for OPs, but again, I think that's kudos to students who do put a lot of effort and attention to detail in preparing for this exam. So we'll ask you questions trying to understand what you're proposing, but in general, you must be prepared to defend everything that's on your slide. So if you don't want to defend, your knowledge of atomic force microscopy, don't put atomic force microscopy on your slide, even if it's in the passing, okay? So sometimes we've seen some of the introductory slides that we kind of, paused on and said, oh, how does this technique work that you're showing, okay? So anything that's on your slide is a fair game. And so for your proposal, again, everything that you're proposing, you should be able to defend, and that's really important. So try not to dig yourself too deep into proposing too many things, because then you'll have to be able to be prepared to defend every single thing that you're proposing. All right, so when I think about this conceptually, where to start, so what I would recommend for analytical students to go to major review journals, in like recent journals. And here is a list that, at least for me, something that comes to my mind, annual reviews of analytical chemistry. Analytical Chemistry Journal has a lot of good perspective articles published throughout the year. There is analysts, publishes review articles. Transit Analytical Chemistry is a good journal. The nice thing about those journals is that usually those reviews are relatively short. So in particular, when you're sifting through a bunch of ideas, you don't want to go to something like Chemical Reviews, which is comprehensive, and read through 50 pages of a review article on a topic. Okay, so once you've selected a topic, these are good journals to go to and find an article in Chemical Reviews or some more comprehensive. So Accounts of Chemical Research is not a review journal, but it's like the most exciting things throughout chemistry and not just in analytical chemistry that you can find there. Chemical Society Reviews. So all of those are more broadly general chemistry journals that you can go to regardless of your discipline. So because you will be working on this for a while and you will be presenting it, find a topic that you care about, that you like, that you enjoy thinking about. Identify gaps in that area and propose a solution, and make sure that those things have not been done. So you will be asked about the novelty of your proposal. So this is where this comes to a point. If this has been done, then there is a problem with your proposal. For analytical chemistry students, focus on analytical chemistry, on measurement science, okay? So I know that in general we do not require that, but it will benefit you as a student in your graduate career to focus in OP on measurement science and not on other topics. You can go into synthesis, you can go into a lot of different things, but I'd rather recommend you to focus on measurement science. We do require you to select a topic far enough away from your area of research. And if we feel that it's close to your area of research, that's where there will be a lot of scrutiny on what you're proposing. So if you're proposing a novel idea and the committee appreciates that this is really far away from what you're doing, there will be a lot less poking around and seeing that you actually can stand on behind every idea there. But if you propose something that's of low novelty, it will create a lot of additional questions and a lot of scrutiny on what you're proposing. So for the written proposal, Stephen already gave you a really good overview of what we expect. This is just my kind of 2 cents on what I think the proposal should look like. If it's more than 6 pages, single-spaced, you're probably putting too much. Okay, so our 21 proposals that Stephen mentioned are 6 pages narrative. That's all that you have on 1 page of specific aims, for example. Here is the title, objectives, background, and significance. I give you some kind of roughly outline of how long should all those sections be. Specific aims, so objectives are general objectives of research. Specific aims is something that's measurable, that, so I'll research this and that to achieve a specific outcome of my proposal. And then the approach that you will be using, about 2-3 pages, I think. Again, I think of single space, so maybe that's to clarify. And then the summary, what will be the outcome of your proposed work, references in any format that you want. So if you can get hold of copies of proposals, NSF or NIH proposals from your PIs, I give my students copies of proposals. So that's always a good kind of resource to go through and kind of to get an idea of what a proposal actually looks like. Okay, so your proposal should resemble those that you get from your PI. So during the exam, you're presenting your original proposal, so about 20 to 30-minute presentation without interruptions. So you have slides for about 20 to 30-minute presentation, and you're prepared to be interrupted. So we will usually be done in about an hour with your initial presentation of your original proposal. Use figures from literature to support your idea. If you want to do some kind of estimations, calculations, it's totally fine, but don't make up data. So if you're trying to support your idea, use existing data or your estimates based on some calculations or simulations that if you want to be doing any of those. Again, be prepared to defend everything that's on your slides. And usually students usually have a ton of backup slides. So it's up to you how many you want to have, but it's always helpful that if you anticipate certain questions, to have some things in the backup slides to support some of your points. Okay. And so the key points, background, keep it short. Don't spend 10 minutes on your background. Usually, very very early on, you need to articulate the novelty of your proposal. So what is new? What has not been done? Background is what has been done. So as you go through a background, very likely your committee member will ask you, so what is new in your proposal? Okay, so just be able to articulate this early on in your presentation. Explain experiments that you will perform. Think about what you will be doing first. When I don't think I said that, but when you think about specific aims, it's better that they not be dependent on each other entirely, right? So they can be. But say if your specific aim 1 failed completely, right? The specific aim 2, if it still stands on its feet, then it's good, right? So just try making them, separating them as much as you can. Not always it's possible. And yes, articulate the outcome of your proposal in your presentation and how it will help address those gaps that you've identified. And for research summary, about 10 to 15 minutes presentation without interruptions. And again, be prepared to be interrupted at any time. So I think Stephen already showed that. This is just for you guys, so about the same ideas that he already articulated. I think I'm running low on time, so just do's and don'ts. So focus on measurement science, do. Ask your group members for advice or your friends, senior grad students in the department. Practice your talk with a group. Understand the field. Make sure you explain everything. Make sure you use figures of good quality. I mean, this is really important, okay? So your committee members will get annoyed if you show them figures with really tiny fonts. So, and just make sure everything is visible and readable on your slides. And don't use too wordy slides. Make sure all the fonts are readable and visible. And yeah, be well rested before your presentation. And yeah, don't leave things until the last moment. Don't overcomplicate your idea. Again, if you put 12 different techniques into your idea, you'll have to be able to defend 12 different techniques. Don't overload your slides. As I said, don't propose too many techniques because that will be just too much work for you to understand how they work, and don't make up data. And with that, I hopefully left at least a minute or so for questions.
Any burning questions? Now's the time. Ooh,
Good.
I have the lights up here. Okay. We weren't moving enough.
Yes.
So, there is one that we need to send before we that analysis of proposal. So, how far we are allowed to make our actual proposal, how flexible that is. Like, for example, we write a proposal, but then we realize when we're actually designing the experiments that we need to go a little bit further than the basic. So, how flexible that is.
Well, you will be submitting one pager, right, with your research summary. So I think in that one pager it has to be just an idea. This is the research topic. These are the research gaps that I identified. This is what I think my solutions may be to those research gaps. Just in one page to let your committee members look at that, and we may say, well, your idea is way too far from, or way too close to your research, or way too far from measurement science. We don't think it's fruitful. If you just propose animal studies, for example, we don't want analytical premise to be
talking about animal studies, right? For example, not that it's not a valuable research direction, but it's not for measurement science kind of exam. So that's kind of the idea. So that we'll be just looking. It doesn't have to be fully worked through idea. And I don't know how we'll deal with if you want to change the topic. I think this is something that we'll see how to deal with as we go.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that at grad studies, and the one pager does not like necessarily bind you to a topic. So if you write that and you get feedback and you're like, oh, my committee says this idea sucks, I'm not going to do it anymore. That's fine. You can change your topic. The idea is to get you thinking about it early, because we know if the one pager is due in August, that probably like sometime in June or July, you're going to sit down and start thinking about this. And you would be surprised, but there's some people that don't start thinking about it till October. So this is kind of built in to get you to think about it early.
All right, well, thank you so much, Dr. Laskin. Let's thank her. So remember, shuffle in and out quietly, please, if you can. Yeah, so next we have inorganic chemistry. If you want to, you can use the laptop or the clicker, just hit the go button.
Oh, did you actually put these on slides?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you want to.
Oh, okay. There we are.
You probably put it in the corner.
Ooh, everyone's leaving.
I might use like analytical and this one, I might use it the two become two.
Well, yeah, I just try to like simplify it. They've already been taking like an hour. They don't want to hear like a lot more stuff. All right. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the inorganic divisions process with the OP. So if you have any questions at the end, you can ask me. There's the sheet here of my OP tips. So here are some of the do's. And I will tell you that a lot of what Dr. Laskin said for the analytical is also kind of how we feel in inorganic, except don't do measurement science. But other than that, like a lot of what she said in terms of developing the topic and the learning objectives and all of that are very similar, right? So the first one I have is choose a topic that interests and excites you. So when you read the literature and you're looking for a topic, read something that you think is really interesting and not just what we want you to do. Like you should read something that you like, not what you think we like, because we like a lot of things. So you should make it personal to you. Ask your research advisor and check the graduate student handbook about the divisional guidelines. So there's a lot more clarification this year in the handbook, and you got a copy of the handouts when you walked in. So things like template, like you can use the NSF or the NIH template now. Appropriate length, we recommend like 8 single spaced or 10 to 15 double spaced. Whether or not it should be related to your research. So in the inorganic division, we feel that it should not be related to your research. So you want to pick an idea that's not super close to what you're doing. We want you to kind of think outside of the box a little bit. That doesn't mean make something crazy or something totally out there. It just means don't make it so that we think it's kind of like your own research. I would definitely come up with a few ideas and spend time researching them simultaneously. So this is something I do when I work on my own proposals. Like I come up with multiple ideas at once and then I kind of narrow them because not every idea works, right? So you want to like get rid of the ideas that don't work and then focus in on the ideas that do work. But if you only start researching one idea and that one is a dud, then you're going to have to kind of start over. So kind of narrow it in on a few different things that you think are interesting. Definitely use figures to make sure that your report's interesting and effective, and please make sure that you reference those figures accordingly. It's really important in your presentation that it's clear what are your ideas and what you've taken from the literature.
The next one is a big one. Make sure you actually propose something. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but I have been in OPs where the students have spent so much time on the background that they forgot to actually propose something. And the committee is sitting there like, okay, like what are you actually going to do? We're confused. So make sure that it's very clear like what you're actually proposing, like what you actually want to do. Definitely get help from other graduate students and other professors. So while each individual advisor has an idea of whether or not they want to help their students with their OP, certainly there's other graduate students in the department that would be really helpful, especially if it's out of area for you, it might be in area for them. You can definitely ask your committee, you can ask other professors based on a class that you took or something like that. So you're not in this alone. Please get help from people where you need it. And definitely have someone proofread your report. And better to have multiple people proofread your report because some people are good proofreaders and some people are not. So make sure you get somebody that can really help polish your report and make it really good. Now, in terms of your talk, of course, you want to make a talk that's engaging. You want to make it interesting, right? You want the committee to be as excited about your topic as you are. So certainly that, but it should be recognizable to your report. So I've gone to OPs where the presentation is completely different from the written report. And given that there's a 2-week period between when you hand in that report and when you do your presentation, I know that person did that entire presentation in 2 weeks. So if you have changes from your original proposal, that's okay. You can have changes, you can have modifications, you can have updates. You know, if you're working on your presentation and you realize, oh my God, like this is totally not going to work, you know, it's okay to make changes and it's okay to address that. But you shouldn't pick an entirely new topic like in that 2-week span because you're just not going to be able to do it justice. And then definitely practice your talk in front of a group of people. So in my group, we do a lot of practice talks. So we'll assemble the rest of the group and somebody will give a practice talk. And I think that's a really good idea. What I hear from the students in my group is that usually their coworkers are harder on them than the committee. So assemble a group of people that want to help you but are not afraid to be mean to you and ask you hard questions, right? So people that aren't going to pull any punches, okay? So have them practice in front of them. And this is also good because one of the key things we want you to work on in your OP presentation is thinking on your feet, right? And the more practice you get at thinking on your feet, the better off you are. So if you can get some good practice on thinking on your feet, that will really help you in the exam. And then, of course, dress professionally for your presentation. That's always a good one. So in terms of things that you should not do, so don't forget to reference others' work and don't forget to clearly delineate in your talk like what is yours and what is in the literature. Don't make up data to say what the outcome of your proposal would be. Like we're really not supposed to teach you to make stuff up like that. So don't fabricate data, but if there's data in the literature that's similar, you may call attention to it, you may reference it or something like that, but just don't make stuff up. Don't make your report a zillion pages because we don't want to read it and you don't want to write it. And so that's one of the reasons that we've sort of established these templates that you can use or suggested these templates. Don't start your report the week before it's due. Obviously, don't make your talk really long, especially now you've got a 2-hour time slot. And generally, we think that we're going to spend an hour on the original proposal, and then you're going to do like a 20-minute research talk, and we're going to ask you questions like that. So don't make your talk super long. Don't think you have it and don't need to practice. Trust me, you never have it, okay? Even I practice. Like, I practice my talks when I go out and give seminars because I want to put my best foot forward and I don't want to look like an idiot. So definitely practice. Don't dress like you rolled out of bed either. So dress professionally, make it look like you care about what you're doing and you really want to be there and all of that. Don't think you have to do it by yourself. You definitely do not have to do it by yourself. And look around the room, like you're all doing this together. So you should certainly be able to lean on each other and get advice from people. So certainly people want to help you. So please ask for help. And then don't disregard the divisional guidelines. And when I say the divisional guidelines, really, I think the best policy is for you to sit down with your advisor and say, okay, like, what are your rules for this OP? And just kind of go with how your advisor does it, because I think that will be the best. All right. Do you guys have questions?
We've got a whole 5 minutes, so feel free to ask pretty much anything.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So how, let's say I felt like making a bad decision and was like, I'll do something biochem related even though I'm in organic materials.
Uh-huh.
Can you go that far outside of your rule?
Yeah, of course. I've had students do biochem things. The key thing, though, is to think about your committee, right? So, like, who's on your committee, and make sure that you're making it approachable, right? Like, I've had students that Phil Lau used to teach this, like, drug discovery course, and they had to write a proposal in there. So they recycled that into their OP, and I had no idea what they were talking about. Like, I had to go to my biochem colleagues to, like, translate this thing. And so don't make it so far out of the box that the committee has no idea what's going on. But if you want to do an idea like a biochem idea, just make it relatable to your audience, right? Yeah, I mean, I've been in all kinds of OPs with all kinds of different topics. More questions?
There's no bad questions. It's a very uncertain time.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you say is a good idea of a page count? Because we heard 8 single space, then we heard 6 single space. Can you offer a third perspective?
Yeah, I mean, well, I kind of help make up some of the other perspectives too. I think 8 single space is good, or 10 to 15 double space. Like, it's very up in the air, right? It depends on font size and margins and how many figures you use. I tend to be somebody that uses a lot of figures. So when I write my own proposals, like, mine have a lot of pictures and figures, because I feel like that helps explain it more. So I think you should not make it more than 15 pages. I think nobody wants to read all of that. That's my own opinion. Yes?
What was the best OP you ever saw?
Oh, gosh.
That's a strong question.
I could tell you more about the worst OP I ever saw than the best OP I ever saw. I've seen a lot of good OPs, and some of them are just like taking an old problem and taking like a new approach. So not reinventing the wheel, they're taking an existing problem and maybe thinking about solving it in a different way. I think, for me personally, I think a good way to come up with an OP is to like read 2 things and then see if you can like combine them in some way, or see if you can make them relate to each other, or use this approach to solve this problem, or something like that. The worst OP I read had nothing to do with chemistry, and it was about GIS, Geographic Information Systems, and it was about mapping mercury contaminants in like wells, which didn't have anything to do with chemistry. It had to do with mapping. So that's why I say, like, don't go too far out of the box, but certainly do something that is really interesting to you. Any more questions? Yeah.
Is there like a specific time point to reach out to your committee expressing that you're interested in doing the LP? How's it like the August deadline?
Yeah, so as Jordan was talking about, scheduling can be really difficult. So I would certainly reach out to them about scheduling sometime this summer. If you're early, you have more availability of dates, I think. And you will find that not that many people want to take it in August, and like everybody wants to take it in October, November. So if you consider that when you reach out to them, that would be good. But I think if you wanted to start reaching out like in July to start scheduling dates, like that would be totally appropriate. And give them, multiple times, right? Don't just say like, I want to do it this week. like the specific week. Like make sure you give them like a lot of availability of times because people travel and teaching is coming up in the fall and all of that. So.
Yeah, no offense to the professors in the room, I love you dearly. It's like herding cats, if you've ever heard that phrase.
Oh yeah, it is. It's not.
You send them like a month.
It's not easy.
Send them like a month-long when to meet, and they'll fill it out. Like I think I had to send it 3 times to my professors, going, "Hey, there's nothing during this week. Here's another week." So.
Yeah. So the more availability you have, like the better off you are in terms of scheduling. I think September is like ideal OP time. It's not too early, but then you're not getting into like the super crowded period of October and November either. So that'd be my suggestion.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right, great. Thank you.
Good luck, and if you guys have any more questions, you can feel free to email or stop by and let me know.
Yes, at the bottom one is the advanced button.
Cool.
So.
Awesome.
And then we just stay near the computer, so if it's something like.
Sure thing. Sure thing.
Excellent.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. Happy to talk about biochemistry and our divisional expectations for the OP exam. So I'm going to try not to repeat too many of the things that we heard from Stephen earlier, but of course we do have a lot of the same things on these slides. And so we're having you guys develop a research plan for an interesting research topic that is compelling to you. And so we are evaluating you on a couple of different metrics, right? And so how novel is your proposal? Are you addressing a particular important problem? How significant is that problem? And then does it actually seem feasible? Can you actually accomplish the your research objective? And so while you are organizing your OP, you're going to be answering a series of different questions. I really want to emphasize this first one of why is this problem, this gap in knowledge that you've identified in the field, why is it so important that we fill it? And that requires you to dive into the literature and provide us with context, critically engage with prior work to convince us that what you're proposing is important. You also need to identify what has been done, what hasn't been done, make it clear how you are different from what's already been accomplished. And we'll get into eventually the logistics for actually carrying out the experimentation. That's important to include, but I certainly say these are ranked in the order of importance. So formatting. The Biochem and ChemBio division is modeled after the R21 grant by the NIH. And so it seems like students want to have concrete outlines for what the format should be. I would suggest, we're giving you a range for single space pages. I'd say 6 pages is really perfect for a research proposal. And then with the additional specific aims page and the references not included in that page, but figures are included. And so you have to make a decision about, do I include this compelling figure that can convey a really complex topic, or do I spend time in space writing in prose to describe a particular idea? Okay, so before you submit the whole document, and instead in August you'll be submitting a 1-page document that describes your research objectives. And so this is essentially the specific aims page that is providing an overview of your proposal. And so this 1-page overview should include a couple of different components. It should identify some unmet need, some problem, the goals of your proposed research that are trying to address these unmet needs, the expected outcome. At the end of the day, after all the research has been done, what will the result be, and how is that going to impact society? If the research outcomes, if you achieve your goals, what societal benefit will there be? And so generally, we're suggesting people to propose 2 to 3 specific aims for a 2-year research program. Don't be over ambitious. Don't propose a 10-year, multi-center proposal. No, this is, what maybe, a postdoc could do in across a couple of years. And so this Aims page, it's a standalone document, and it can, in a single page, can convey everything that a reader needs to know about, this is basically what this proposal is about. So I have some suggested structure, but of course you can, there is a lot of flexibility in how to design a specific Aims page. Really, it's just 4 paragraphs. The first paragraph is introducing the background, and introducing the problem that you've selected as being really important. What is our gap in understanding, and how does that result in a need? And then we have a paragraph about what you're proposing to do, sort of at a high level. Then we have this in quotes paragraph, where it's more of a bulleted list of the specific aims or objectives that you have in your proposal. And then at the very end, a final paragraph that describes the outcomes. And those expected outcomes should feed back to and address what your overall objective of the proposal was. The research strategy. So this is really the more expansive portion that you're going to be submitting with the ahead of your oral exam. So this is going to be that 6-page document, 1 to 2 pages on background and significance. Again, we're looking for critical engagement with the literature where you can identify the big problems that need to be addressed. 1 to 2 paragraphs about innovation. How is your approach different from prior approaches? How other people have been working in this area? And then the biggest portion of this written document is the research approach, where you're actually talking about the experiments that you're planning on doing. How are you designing them? What kinds of controls are you using? Why are these the appropriate methods to use? Okay, and then finally we have this new component to the preliminary exam, this thesis research checkpoint, where you'll be describing your progress and goals for your thesis research. And so this is really an opportunity for you to introduce to the other members of your committee what you're doing, and so that they can provide some feedback and recommendations and help connect you with resources that you need to be successful in your thesis. And so spend a couple 5 minutes or so on the introduction to get everyone on the right page. So while we are familiar with what our colleagues work on in a general sense, we don't know all of the individual projects that are going on in every other group. And so you'd be surprised that we actually do need this introduction to get up to speed and understand what our colleagues are working on. Spend maybe 10 minutes talking about the approaches that you're using and the results. Specifically in the biochem area, what techniques are you using, and what have you been trained in? What do you anticipate that you'll need to additional training you think you'll need to get in order to accomplish your overall goals? And then in maybe 5 minutes on future directions. What's the 2-year plan? And then what do you need in order to accomplish these plans? That's one way that your committee might be able to be helpful in providing suggestions for how to get there, and maybe we can be helpful. And then actually describe us, what's that next paper that you're going to be writing? Do you have an idea for what journal that you want to go to? Think concretely. Take an opportunity to think concretely about what this is going to look like. I think I just have a couple of general tips, and I think we've gone through a lot of these already. That it should be original and shouldn't be just an incremental step, but also, we're only talking about 2 years, so we're not going to be curing cancer. It's really easy to be overambitious. It's okay to, we're just taking one small slice towards that larger objective. I think one thing I haven't heard so much from other people is getting to the description of the goals of your proposal early in your oral presentation. And when I say early, I mean like slide 3 or 2. If you spend a lot of time talking about background and the committee member doesn't know what the proposal objectives are, we might get distracted by other elements of the background literature that aren't relevant to what you're actually proposing. So tell us early, set the context for it. Tell us, you have control of the scope of our conversation when you tell us what the overall objectives are early in your presentation. So that's a recommendation. I think everyone has already said that, you know, if there's something on a slide, we're going to ask you questions about it, and you should be prepared to describe it in more detail. I think that's what I have left. Any questions? I have about 4 minutes.
They're not kidding. Go ahead. I just want to make a quick comment. They're not kidding about introducing the novelty early because they will just interrupt you otherwise and throw off your whole flow. Okay. So it's better for you to put it out there early rather than have them go, okay, what's the point of this? Because then it doesn't make you feel good. So, yeah.
So let's say I've got an idea that has to do with developing a technique for research.
Sure.
Is that still considered hypothesis driven? Is the hypothesis I think this would work? Is that sound
Absolutely. I mean, if you've identified that we want to be making a particular or answer particular questions, but the existing technology is insufficient in some way to address that problem, your idea, your hypothesis is that this new approach will be able to accomplish this. That's a great proposal. I think one of the challenges sometimes might be you're going to be writing 2 specific aims, right? And specific aim 1 might be develop this new technique. Specific aim 2 might be to use that technique. Those are very interdependent aims, right? And so you may need to think more deeply about how do I define my 2 specific aims so that they're not 100% dependent on each other. Yeah.
Any other questions? We got a whole 3 minutes. I guess I'll ask a general one. So it says prepare a 20 to 30 minute presentation with interruptions and questions. How long does that usually end up being?
It's probably about an hour for the OP portion, the research portion, and we're thinking 30 minutes for the research presentation. Sometimes, though, that hour can go longer. And so your research advisor can be a useful friend in the room in terms of keeping track of time, but it's also helpful if you remind your committee, hey, we're at an hour and I've only covered one of my specific aims. Maybe we need to advance. It's very, it's very easy for us to get distracted and not pay attention to the time. And so, I know that's one of my jobs when I'm in the room, but also help us by paying attention to the time a little bit. Yeah.
So what level of interaction should you have with your advisor concerning your OP? Is that up to your advisor to determine, or are there like specific rules concerning that?
Yeah, so your advisor may have different ideas specifically. I think it is a good idea to talk to them about just, in a 5-minute conversation, if you just talked about what your idea for your proposal is. And they can say, wow, that's awfully close to what your thesis work is. Maybe that's not a good idea. Or, hey, that's, as we were just hearing about, that's GIS. That's too far out there as well. I think that's a good idea. They're not going to help with, don't send the written proposal to your advisor. Because the writing should be your own.
Yeah, and I believe it's outlined in the handbook, like the updated version of the handbook, where it'll say you should talk with your advisor and ask them basically like, hey, how involved are you going to be with this effectively? So.
I think at the topic selection stage, that's an appropriate time. But they say, all right, go. That sounds like a great topic. Best of luck. And then you're kind of on your own.
Cool. Thank you so much. Let's
Thank you.
Dr. Brown. All right. So, still waiting. I'm sorry?
No, okay. Oh, you have a physical.
Okay, there. Okay, cool. You're here. Great.
Oh,
Wonderful.
it is the same slide?
Yeah. So, and they all pop in. So, if you wanted to just put them all on at once, feel free. If you want the clicker, you can. But just if you could stand near the computer. Thank you again for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
I appreciate that.
I have to direct question to John. Okay.
Am I supposed to be sitting around? What are we doing? I answered something.
This is going to be a very personalized presentation. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh. All right, so we can get started.
Okay. All right. Well, PCAM presentation. So here, just a few brief tips. So I have to admit, so I got put last minute by to replace John Hood. So if you have questions, detailed questions, make sure to send an email to Professor Johnson Hood. So here are some tips. So generally, what is expected? So you may want to start talking to your advisor and even your committee member early. Okay, so I assume everyone has found your committee member already. So make sure you talk to them early. And the one advice is that do not try to start early and do not push everything in the last week or right before the deadline, because you have more difficulty in scheduling all those meetings, because everyone probably will be in the last week. So the second one is that in general, I'm sure this is in the graduate student handbook, so is that the OP should be original, interesting, and generally correct. Okay, so original in the sense that it's not directly related to your, for example, research. Okay, so but it also need to be deep. You need to think deep. So I think what separates a good OP and a bad OP is that everyone can propose, for example, something original, but you need to think deep and be able to defend it. Okay, so because it's an exam, so just like many other thesis defense, so your committee member will be asking questions. Okay, so basically you need to think deep. For example, a question, let's say if you propose doing certain calculation or doing some certain tool development. Okay, a question we may ask is, what's the current status? Why you're proposing this method over another method? What are the advantages, disadvantages? So you need to demonstrate a certain level of understanding of the whole field. Okay, so okay, so this is just a written document. So as I said earlier, so you need to. It's not what, of course, you need to write to demonstrate you know the knowledge, but in my opinion, what is even more important is a demonstration that you really think deep rather than just gather a few informations from different papers. Okay, so you should really be able to defend your idea. Okay, so that's I think the key concept here. And also as a PCAM, so in general you want to show a demonstration of fundamental principles. Okay, so for example, how is a certain areas of research you're proposing is related, for example, to the fundamental principle. For example, I know some of you doing quantum computation, so what's for example, algorithm, what's the current status of quantum computing, okay, and how it is tied to the foundation of quantum mechanics. So those are, and this we already discussed. So if you, one thing I want to emphasize is that sometimes this proposal is a different approach compared to a research paper. Okay, but in general, for example, when you read a research paper, you see, for example, in the first page or the first few paragraphs, people laid out the problem. Okay, so you definitely want to have that in your research proposal as well. So the whole idea is that you want to give maybe a broader context to all your committee members, especially if they're not directly working in your field. For example, why certain topics is important.
okay, and what's the current status, what has been done and what has not done. So in grant writing, we often say, oh, this is something called you want to identify the knowledge gap. Okay, so what has been done, and for example, you want to start here, and people have done this, and your ultimate goal should be something very important. And how do you fill the gap in between? And that's basically where the original research comes. Okay, so basically, how do you propose a certain technique or a certain method to address this challenge? All right, a few preparation tips. So first, it should be interesting. So I'm sure this is just like your research, right? So basically, you want to first you want to get yourself, feel excited about your research or your proposal. You should propose something, even you're not doing the same research, but you should propose something that you genuinely find you're interested in. Okay, so if you don't even like your proposal, so it's very difficult to to do a good presentation or think deep. Okay, so the second is that, as we said, so basically, this is generally true for many things, like proposal writing or if you're writing a paper. Okay, so every single sentence in your proposal should be either from your own data or you're very confident with, or you should add a reference. Okay, so every single sentence should be very precise. Okay, so and you should be able to defend it. You should understand. So because if, for example, especially also figures. So for example, if you have certain figures on the PowerPoint, you need to know what exactly it means because we'll ask questions. Okay, so you should be able to defend your idea. That's what we call it. So if, as I said here, as someone said here, so if there's something that is not necessary or you're not exactly sure, so maybe don't include it. Okay, so you need to defend your ideas. That's even more important, compared to just include slides for just include the background knowledge. So it's more important to show you can logically defend your idea and you have thought deeply about your topic, the topic you're proposing. And the third one is practice. So maybe I think the best is probably you find some your friends or your colleagues basically to practice, okay, from the presentation and think deep. Try to encourage someone else to ask some questions, okay. So in general, this part we don't want for example, we don't want PIs to be involved. Your immediate PI, like your supervisor, to be involved. So so basically this is on yourself, but maybe try to talk to a few friends and talk to some colleagues and ask people. Sometimes we call this internal review. Okay, so for example, we write a grant before we submit or a paper we submit. We ask some of our colleagues, for example, to read through and give us some comment. So it's like a mock review process. Okay, so basically you have a better idea, okay, what questions people will ask, and try to reach out to a few, for example, people from different backgrounds, and you will be amazed that people are thinking completely differently. That's a cool part of, to really branch out your mind and thinking, what are the questions, and maybe can trigger some new ideas. So this is like, for example, the first graph or first few graphs when writing a paper or a proposal. So basically, state the problem first and early, and state why it is important, and identify the knowledge gap. Okay, what has been done, what has not been done, and how you are going to propose something original to solve an existing problem. So this is also, I think, okay, so maybe some of you are not here, but this is what we also call the hypothesis driven. You don't want to say something, oh, I just want to do this because it's interesting. So you want to have a hypothesis, why it's important, and what do you think the result will be? Okay, so I know a lot of the research has not been done, for example, whether it's theory or experiment, but you want to have some hypothesis. What do you expect, for example, the signal or the result to be? And if it didn't work, what are the backup plans? Okay, what's the risk of doing this type of research? So all these things, it could have a little bit in this type of, for example, you can have some not 100% sure, right? Because I said the research has not been done, but we want to see that you show some, reasoning. Okay, so basically, what's the potential outcome of this research? Okay. Yeah, so again, so you may have some topic that no one in the room, but it's up to you. It's your job that you're trying to convince everyone in the room that this is an important question and the research is interesting. And also convince the people that the approach you propose is reasonable and doable, okay? So, okay, so it's okay. So it's okay if you made a few mistakes. Really, this is really not exam to test your overall knowledge of everything. Okay, it's more like a test to, at least in our opinion, it's more like a test to make sure you demonstrate some certain research skills. Like, for example, you know the literature. Okay, so basically you do your literature, you know the field, and more importantly, you demonstrate a path basically from identifying the knowledge gap and reasoning how you can go from there. Okay. So I think that's it. Maybe let's just open for questions.
Remember, there's no dumb questions, as always.
Yeah, and the thing is, don't feel stressed about the research too, the presentation too much, and start early.
Yeah, I guess I will reemphasize, and this is gonna be a thing throughout all of the presentations, is the fact that the novelty is the biggest part of your OP. If you can't express what the novelty of your thing is, whether it's something really, really big and huge and wow, I've invented a new thing, or hey, I combined all these tiny things into a new thing, ta-da. Stressing that is really important, because that's kind of the whole point of the OP, is that you propose something, you're gonna kind of show why it should work. So, yeah, any questions? We have 3 minutes, so. I was like, there were 4 of you in the room, so I can just look at all 4 of you right now and ask a question. Because I guess with PChem, there's, you can have OPs that are more like theory-based, like calculations.
Yeah.
So if you were here for this one compared to like analytical or something like that, it's gonna look a little different. So, that's why we have all the different professors come in. Well,
if no questions, feel free to ask your advisor at a later time, but try to start early and prepare early. Okay.
Thank you so much. Last minute substitution, so let's thank him. Okay, we have 3 minutes. We're gonna give people a couple minutes to come in. But next up is organic. So if you're organic, okay, cool, people are coming in. Awesome. If you want more food, feel free to grab more food. We have a lot. So. Yeah, and if anybody didn't get handouts, we still have some left. These will all be emailed to you, so if you didn't get it, don't panic. This will also be emailed to you, like the slides, the recording, everything, so. Cool. Awesome.
I want my face to be clean.
That's fair. Yeah, so it's the bottom button. And if you can stay on this side of the room, that'd be good, so it can actually pick up the recording.
Oh yeah, that's no problem.
So yeah, so that's that one's the laser pointer, and then the one right above it's the advanced slide.
There we go.
So thank you again so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Anything to reduce the anxiety.
I'm pretty sure the gray hairs I have are from the OP. Actually, the year that I was attending the session, I was also running the session, so that was an interesting year. Okay.
So, yeah, I don't have anything in about the new requirement.
That's fine.
I'll probably have it.
Yeah, and that's totally fine, because it's not too dissimilar to what's already expected, so.
Well, yeah, it's just this added, checkpoint research.
Right.
Why
why they chose to put it in the same session as the OP is something that I personally still question. How to say. As if there wasn't enough stress associated with the event, right? Okay, so now you get to talk about the research. Oh, great.
People was thinking I was always told, oh, have research slides ready, give
Yeah,
us extra time, but then it was the thing of like, that was just if there's extras, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, we always told people to do that because if there was a problem with the OP,
right,
we'd have them talk about the research just to give us a complete picture of what they were person.
Exactly.
But yeah.
All right, so I think we'll get started because it is 12:45, so if people are late, that's their fault. Cool. So yeah, Dr. Lipton is going to present about organic chemistry specifically. So again, all of these are going to be a little bit different from one another, so just make sure to pay attention.
All right. Well, thank you all for showing up. So if you've been here for previous talks, I'm going to go over a lot of the same ground that you've already heard, but hopefully with a little bit of spin about organic that will be specific to the area. So, in general, when you're choosing an OP topic, find things that are interesting to you. And very oftentimes, if you're having trouble choosing a topic, one of the best places to go is to the literature. Just reading articles is a great way to get an idea of what's out there, what the problems are, what some of the gaps are in knowledge, and that should help prime the pump for coming up with good ideas yourself. One of the things that I can say from my own personal experience is, start thinking about ideas early, because you may have to throw out, your first 5, 6, 7 ideas as unworkable or not significant enough. But the more you do this, as an iterative process, the more ideas you come up with, the better you get at it, and you will find that your ideas get better and better. So, in the world of organic, what kinds of topics do we see in the OP? Some people will do multi-step synthesis, a natural product total synthesis, or come up with a new methodology. But those are certainly not the only things that people come up with. More and more people are proposing areas and projects in the areas of chemical biology, or chemical tools for biological applications. Although I will mention that one of the problems that we often see is people want to propose to develop a new drug. Well, talk to anybody in the drug industry, they will tell you that's not so easily done. It's about a 10 to 17 year prospect. So remember that this is a 2 to 3 year project you're proposing. So do try to keep it within that constraint of something that a single person could do in 2 to 3 years. You can also, come up with a materials idea. So, soft materials based on organic frameworks is totally fine. And I will mention something that I think comes up in every talk, which is we really want to see a hypothesis-driven proposal. Now, in the world of organic, this is a somewhat tricky question. How do you make a total synthesis hypothesis-driven? One of the things that I would guide you towards is be sure you can answer the question, why does the world care about this? Why should anybody give you money to do this project? If you can't answer that in a concise way, be a little worried about your proposal. So you want to make sure that there is a good fundamental reason why you should be carrying out this research. And that's what I would say, it constitutes this hypothesis-driven question. So, one of the things that we don't want to see is somebody say, well, I'm going to do high throughput screening and come up with a molecule, because there is no hypothesis there. Now, I will also highlight another very important criterion, which is that we really want to make sure that the proposal you're putting forward is distinct from your own research. And I will say that this is a topic about which reasonable people can disagree. I know from conversations with some of my colleagues that there are certain people out there that think if you're doing a total synthesis, you shouldn't propose a total synthesis. Oops, sorry. Getting ahead of myself here. There we go. I am not of the school of thought that doing a total synthesis should disqualify you from proposing one. But I would say if you're making, say, a polyketide natural product, you shouldn't propose making another one, because that does get perilously close to what you're doing. Or if you're making, say, kinase inhibitors, you don't propose making another kinase inhibitor. And one of the things you can do to make sure you don't run afoul of this is you can always talk to any member of your committee about whether your proposal is too close to your research. So, make use of your committee, make sure that you're on solid ground there. And of course, you're not limited to talking to your committee, people in your group, people in other groups. Certainly people that have already gone through the OP process are great resources for giving you feedback about your ideas, and guiding you away from any potential problems. Oops. Okay. So we are rather flexible in terms of the format of the proposal. As a general guideline, you can look at either the NIHR 21 proposal or the NSF grant proposals as guidelines for how you should do it. The main thing that I would say is be concise. Nobody on your committee wants to read a 25-page document, especially one in 10-point single-spaced font. So be kind to your committee. Keep your proposal generally to 6 to 8 pages. Figures are good. We love reading pictures. So, and you can, of course, find guidelines for doing this. So, as I say, 6 to 8 pages. This includes, figures, charts, tables, schemes. Your references do not count to this total, nor do your specific aims. And, generally speaking, make it readable. So a sans serif font is good, black font color, and 11 or 12 size font is a good idea. Figure legends, on the other hand, can be a bit smaller. So, the overall philosophy here is keep your document highly readable. Don't, cram things in. Don't make it too close spaced. Take it easy on your readers. They will be, happier if you do that for them. Okay, so in terms of the format, start off with your significance and background, and in this stress why it is important. Why should somebody care about your proposal? And also give us appropriate background. What has already been done? What competing methods are out there? And be sure to include references. Nothing is going to set your committee off faster than if they feel you are ignoring key references in your background. The thing you must also stress is your innovation. What makes this novel? What makes it different from what's already been done? And, I will point out that one of the problems that we often see, and something to be very mindful of when writing your proposal, is not to use an incremental increase to what's already been done. And one of the ways in which people can run afoul of this is, by combining, method A with problem B, using a method that's already been done for a related problem and applying it to a different problem. That is incremental at best and is very low on the innovation side of things. So, to be innovative, you want to be very clear how you're different from what's already been done. What is new, what is interesting, what is novel about what you're proposing. And then you want to include your approach, your experimental methods. So depending on the nature of your proposal, that approach could be a retrosynthetic analysis, highlighting key transformations in what you're trying to do. If you're doing something other than synthesis, then it's a little more clear cut what your approach and your experimental methods are. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Start early. You give yourself enough time that you can make various changes. You may have to abandon your first or second ideas. So start early and make use of others. Have others read it and critique it. Give people a little time themselves to read and give you feedback. You don't have to give people a finished product. Whoever you're using as your resources, get it to them early, get early feedback. You may have to make some major changes, so give them time to make that happen. Okay, what not to do. You don't have to use, fancy terminology. Write it in your own words. Make sure that what you say makes sense. And use good editorial judgment to make sure that it's a well-written document. Okay, now about the presentation. And I'm going to reiterate what other people have said. Prepare a 20 to 30 minute talk. I usually tell my students 20 slides maximum. And the reason for this is be prepared to be interrupted. This is not like a seminar that you're giving. This is very much a back and forth between you and your committee. So it is totally typical for people to interrupt you, ask a question, and you're going to have to be prepared for that. And one of the things that I really want to emphasize is in your presentation, you can presume that your committee have all read your proposal. You do not need to give 10 or 15 minutes of background. Keep the background slides very minimal, 5 slides at most. Touch on the most important points, the nature of the problem, where the innovation lies, but keep the background minimum. Get to what you're proposing to do very quickly. Yeah, so most of your slides should be focused on the proposed research itself. And unlike these slides, do not have a lot of text on your slides. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. Schemes are great. So keep the text to a minimum. And also, in addition to the 20 to 30 slides that you're presenting, it's often useful to have backup slides. So if you can anticipate questions about mechanisms, about background material for certain reactions, have those slides ready to go. It will make your life much simpler. And of course, depending on what you're doing, you may need to have some controls in there. You can also, of course, have slides for backup approaches. If you're proposing to do something very speculative, You anticipate that people may have questions about it. One of the things you can do is to think about, okay, if this doesn't work, what would I do next? Do I have a workaround? So have that available as a backup slide. It just makes your life much easier. And of course, practice, practice, practice. Give a number of practice talks. One of the things that you will see if you give practice talks, when you're doing the real talk, you will talk about 10 to 15% faster than you do in any of your practices. This is a universal truth about giving talks. So practice the talk, get the time, but be aware that when you do it in the real event, the adrenaline of the event is going to mean you're going to talk faster. You will also almost certainly forget at least 2 or 3 key points that you wanted to give. This is why you do have some text on your slides, to prompt you to remember, okay, I need to talk about this now. But you will go faster, you will forget a few things, and your committee will almost certainly remind you that you have forgotten to talk about something. One of the things I will also tell you from my experience with my own students, in your practice talks, you will encourage your friends, your lab mates to ask questions, and they will ask you a good deal of questions. My students tell me they almost never ask the same questions that your committee asks. So be prepared. Your committee will probably ask you some questions that come purely out of left field. It will probably be done more out of curiosity than any sadistic impulse, but it is almost inevitable. Oh, and that's all I had to tell you about. I'm happy to answer any questions. Let's go back.
We are out of time for questions right now, so if you do have questions, can they email you?
Oh, they
right.
certainly you can email me. And our next speaker is here, so I will hand off the slides to her.
Awesome, thank you so much. Happy birthday. I do have a picture if you want.
Okay.
If you could stay on the side of the room, that'd be good.
Okay.
Just for the microphone.
I'll try not to wander too much.
As long as you're not all the way on the other side.
Right, okay.
That's fine. All right, I think we'll get started just because we're a couple minutes late, so don't want to hold the grad students up as well afterwards. Obviously, feel free to take a couple minutes extra.
Okay.
This is the panel, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So welcome. We're glad to be able to give you some clarifying information about the OPs. I'll try to balance a little bit. I guess some of you have heard a number of iterations of this for different divisions, and it looked like several people just came in now. So I'll provide a little bit of clarification using slides that were prepared last year by Jung May. I'm not Jung May. And I think some of this was prepared before the new department guidelines have come out. So if you see any disparities between this and something that was in the department guidelines, those certainly take precedence. And I think that nobody's goal is to make this process more difficult, more pedantic, more rule-driven, right? So when we're providing guidelines, usually the goal is to make your proposal like a real fundable proposal, which would be the highest expression of the OP, right? We don't actually expect that you're giving us an idea that we would fund to the tune of $500,000 to $2 million, but the closer you can get to that bar, the better it is, right? And the better for you as you move through your research, right? Because this is the starting point of you starting to have more and more ideas about your own research. For many people, this is the first time that they've put together an idea that's completely independent of their group's work, and I think a good guideline is that people should not be able to guess from the topic of your OP which group you're in, right? It should be enough different from the things that proposals your advisor would put in that people would not be able to identify the connection. But likewise, I think it's usually productive to choose an idea that's in an area where you've taken classes. So for instance, If I have a student who's a synthetic chemist and is making building blocks for surface polymerization, and so their entire background is organic chemistry, they may struggle if they try to put together a proposal that's based on DFT calculations, unless that's a class that they took, right? So it's a chance to branch out, but if you go so far afield that it's really difficult to have solid support for your idea, that makes the OP more challenging, right? Also, probably if there's not theory involved in your real research, your committee members may also not be theory people, and so they might have difficulty asking real questions in that area. So there's a medium ground. You want it to be out of area, but not crazy out of area. Okay, I noticed that most people are putting on their slides, so Mark Lipton just had on his slides guidance about formatting. This sounds really pedantic. We want Arial or Helvetica font, this certain font size. But the thing this does is it makes it look and feel like a real proposal, right? These are the fonts that people would use in making a real NIH proposal. So immediately when your committee picks up the proposal, it looks a little more like what they expect, right? The content still has to be there, but all of this, single spacing, sort of format limits, speaks to looking professional like a real proposal. Okay. And I think, actually, so I'll use this to speak to a broader point also of not just for the OP, but for any big life situation that is unfamiliar, try to think through it from the other side of the table, right? So here I'm telling you, make the proposal look like we would expect a real proposal. How are you going to test your hypothesis? What are the experiments you would do? What are things that might not work? You guys all spend a lot of time in the lab. You know things often don't work. We've also spent a lot of time in the lab, so we also know things don't work. So it's okay that things may not work, but what are the ways you might predict that they're not going to work? What's going to go wrong? What's the most likely thing? And what would you do if that thing goes wrong? And then once you're finished with all of those experiments, assuming that you learn reasonable things from your experiments, how does that move the big picture forward? So at the end, you go back to the beginning. One of the things that I think is true for most OPs is that you start, I would say you probably have at least 3 to 5 minutes before anybody interrupts you. So you want to get through the main elements of the big picture as fast as possible. This was true for me too when I took my OP. I was told your goal is to, we had to do this at a whiteboard, right? So we had to sketch sort of an overview of our OP topic within the first 5 minutes so that somebody could help us get to the end of our series of ideas if we got off track. But I think you have a good solid 3 minutes before you get interrupted. And once you get interrupted, you want to answer the question in as much as you can. Sometimes we'll be asking questions where you're not going to know the answer. We want to see you think on your feet. That's fine. It's fine to get to the point of, I don't know. But then you also want to say, but here's how I would think about that. Right? So we don't want to just see, I don't know, and I give up. We want to see, I don't know, and here's the experiment that I would do to test that. Right? We also don't want to see, I don't know all of the time. Right? We expect you to do enough preparation that you know some of the things. Let's see, what else should I say about this? Yeah, I mean, sometimes the questions will also go outside the direct content of your proposal to fundamental topics that are related, right? And again, this may take you outside your comfort zone, but the goal is really to see you, think as a scientist, think on your feet. And so that's actually a good thing. I think sometimes the thing that happens is people have this, oh my God, I don't know. And then they sort of freeze. And so that's never the goal of the question. Just keep in mind, everybody is on your side. We're asking a lot of tough questions, but this will be true all the way forward in every manuscript you submit and every proposal you submit. People will ask tough questions, so you're getting some practice now in preparing for those. Let's see if I got, okay. Yeah. Okay, so one other thing I wanted to say is that most people that I've seen give one or more practice talks to students in the department, usually students from their group. But something I would strongly suggest, and this is something I did when I was in graduate school, seek out friends from your committee members' groups, because they know what questions your committee members are more likely to ask. And again, you're not guaranteed they're going to ask any one thing, but sometimes people have little things they like to probe on, and then you're more prepared. Right, so this is an example of thinking on the other side of the table, trying to learn as much as you can about what's likely to come up in a situation that you can't completely control. All right, and I think that's all the things that I had. Does anybody have questions? You guys are tired. Yeah, right, exactly. We've gone through this 6 times now. All right. Well, if you don't have any questions, thanks, and good luck with your OPs.
Yeah, so let's thank Dr. Third. Okay, cool. So, obviously, feel free to grab more food. We're gonna start with the student panel in like a minute. We're gonna get some chairs in for them so they don't have to stand the whole time. So.
Is Stephen going to get the chairs? Is Stephen going to get the chairs? Or Hoffman?
Yeah, because he's gonna unlock the room next to us if you want to help bring in. So now, if I do this right, aha. Someone gets this really low. And then there will be 3 comfy ones, so good luck. Okay. Steven, you get the uncomfy one. Oh. Alright, cool. Give people a couple minutes to come in. Okay. Cool. Alright. Well, we'll get started. Like I said, this is just a Q&A session. I do have questions prepared if no one is ready to ask a question yet. They already have answers for those as well. Kind of the standard, like, how did you choose your topic questions, etc. So, does anyone have any burning questions they'd like to start off on? Or I can just go through some of the ones that already... Yeah, go ahead. That's a good question. Like, I guess how many topics did you go through before you're like, this is the one?
Well, I can start. I only switched my topic twice. So I started with some like generic cancer pathway, and then I said, I'm not that interested in this. And I spent a lot of time on it, and I didn't want to throw it away. But at the end, I was like, you know, if I'm not interested in it, I'm not going to spend the time to really like read into it. So I threw that away. And then I went into a class, actually, Eukaryotic Cell Bio, and they were talking about non-coding RNAs, and I was like, this is fascinating. So then when I started researching that, I applied it to that previous topic of cancer pathway, and I was like, oh, it's upregulated in this pathway, and it's like, and I read a bunch of reviews and saying, we actually don't know what its interactions are involved in, and so my topic then became, I'm going to try to find those interactions. So.
I really only had one main idea from the beginning. I should have had more prepared. I think I had a brainstorm of some like light topics that I thought were interesting to explore, but then I just kind of found myself going down one rabbit hole kind of more and more continuously. At a certain point, I just kind of fell in love with it enough that I didn't think another topic would be as interesting to me, and I felt that I was more willing to put all my eggs in the basket and make it work. With the passion that I had for it, and rather than taking a risk and finding something else, and I just kind of went for a Hail Mary with a really weird topic that I wasn't super experienced in prior, but no one else was, and I thought it would be really cool when the experience for everybody. So I kind of ended up skimming some stuff like over the late spring and like summer, and then once like August rolled around, I hadn't found anything else. I'm like, yep, I'm going all in on this, and just kept doing that for the next couple months.
Similar to Ray, I had I think 3 ideas of like potential LPs, and then I just sort of started on the one that I thought would be easiest for me to research and like present, and that's one I stuck with.
I can go next. So I kind of had 3 different directions during my seminar, and I had my seminar spring, and then I finally decided one to go with, and that was the topic I had in my mind that I'm going to do my OP on this too. So that was like the side of analytical part or the technique. I changed a little bit of like the technique that they used or like that I was reading, But the thing that helped me was I had more or less the background already studied because I studied for my seminar. So I just went ahead with that.
Yeah, I think I also had one main idea. Our year ACS was in Indianapolis in the spring, so we got to go to a bunch of seminars, and there was a material that I thought was really cool for one of the seminars that I went to. So I went through a couple rounds of trying to figure out how I could apply that material to a different reaction, and so that was where I had some trial and error. But I think the main idea was kind of the same the whole time I worked on it.
Also, as a quick side note for you guys, we've put aside food for you, so if you didn't grab food, there's food for you guys. Cool. Okay, yeah.
So let's say like we're giving your presentations, right? And obviously your committee's in there, right? Let's say that their question is something that you will address in 2 slides. Should you address it there and possibly go down a rabbit hole of kind of like skipping your flow? Or should you tell your committee member, hey, I'm going to cover this in the next couple slides? What do you think would be important?
You can actually ask them what they would prefer.
Yeah.
You can literally say to them, like, hey, I'm going to address this in 2 slides. If we can jump to it now, but I will get to it in a second, they'll tell you what they want, basically. At least in my experience.
Yeah, I do that. It's something that you can also play by ear. Cause like, if you have a flow that's gonna make more sense if it like goes in, like in 2 slides and like say, I'll get to that. If it's like something, like the next 2 slides are like, I don't know, not super related to the question, then like maybe jump to it, but like.
It also, it's also depending how important their question is. So like, they would probably really say like, I want to hear what you want to say or what you're gonna say. Or even when it happened to me a lot, and then one of my committee members was like, oh, you're gonna say it soon, okay, I'll stay quiet. So it really is just like, it just depends what they want to hear at that moment. They're just testing you and your knowledge and why even you chose that topic in the first place.
I will say, if it's like a question that's in like 10 slides, don't go to it, because you'll sort of start bouncing around your PowerPoint, because on that 10th slide or so, you'll have content that is dependent on like everything else. So you'll probably confuse people. So like, don't jump more than like 2 slides in advance.
I got quite a few questions about stuff that would be like within the next slide or 2. I felt comfortable enough just telling them that it was coming up, and I'll get to that in a sec, or just like giving them a 1-sentence summary, just being like, short answer is yes, excellent question, I'll get to that in just a second here. That seems to satisfy them already. But that depends on your committee. I just felt comfortable enough telling them that. Comfortable being probably.
Very good, nice. There's no dumb questions. This is a time. I swear to God, it gave me gray hair, so.
How far removed does your OP topic have to be from what you're doing? So a lot of us here are mass spectrometrists, whereas I'm interested in doing something like maybe SEM, TM, or kind of exploring that area more for my own personal benefit, but also trying to do some technical research. How far does your scope have to be from ions and gas phase and that sort of stuff?
It really depends on who's on your committee.
Yes.
So like, ask them. So like, for me, mine was very far removed. Mine was archaeo materials. But like, you could get away with doing some more like environmental-ish stuff with Alex, but like, couldn't be like atmospheric. If you want to do like a water environmental thing, you'd be fine with that. I know some of the mass spec people are like, you do mass spec as your research, don't do mass spec for your OP. But it is really dependent on who's on your committee.
Yeah, like I was straight up told don't even use it as like a verification method for part of my thing. It wasn't even the point. It was like, oh, could I use it as like to verify my stuff is in there? No, I was told do not, like don't touch it, basically.
So I was doing some environmental analysis, but then a lot of environmental analysis uses an aspect just for confirmation of whatever analysts are looking for. So I'm not sure exactly if that would be appropriate.
It is the best answer, so you know.
Definitely ask your advisor. I would say advisor more so than anybody else, but definitely your advisor.
Can you ask your advisor? You could ask your advisor.
Yeah, because now we have basically now it's an open dialogue between your advisor and you at the start, basically asking them, hey, can I, like, well, how involved do you want to be? So, And they're gonna get this like little 1-page summary that like
Yeah.
tells them, hey, here's the idea I'm thinking of, and then they'll tell you no, hopefully not, but you know.
Right, yeah, and on that topic, like, you can ask them questions about if your general topic is, like, fine with them, but then after that, try to keep it a bit more under wraps, or only ask them questions that you need in that regard. So, I had my main idea, plus a few other small ones I hadn't worked on, and I came to him, Chris Iota, in, like, early August, and just asked, like, is this close enough? Is this far enough removed from what we're doing? And his answer was also just that the point of having a project removed from what you're doing is so that all the research you're doing is purely original and doesn't overlap, or at least doesn't overlap much with anything you're already doing in the lab. So you're not just going to have a page of like 30, 40 references, and half of them are going to be stuff that you already looked at for a project that you're already working on. That's the kind of thing they don't want to see. They want you to see you doing a whole bunch of original stuff. And it is as if that was a topic that was still a little similar, but still required entirely new research. That was totally fine with them. So.
But yeah, and that's the point of that little like 1-page thing, is to clear up that ambiguity of like, hey, can I kind of dip my toe in this while being related to it? So.
Yeah.
And my suggestion would be don't go too far away. Like you are doing analytical chemistry, but your OP is like hardcore biology without any technique or analytical part. Your committee members might not like that. And one more thing, it's better to talk to your committee members about the topic as soon as you can. Like when you have started thinking about your OP topic, or like you have narrowed down 2 or 3 topics, go to them, talk to them. Because at that point, they might ask you about your research, and then you can talk to them about your research, and they're like, no, that's very similar to your one, we should drop this. So that's another better.
Actually, that's a very good thing. I guess we should go through that real quick. So what, in general terms, not super specific, general terms going down the line, what is your research that you do versus what was your OP on? And we can start from either end, whoever's ready.
So like I did a lot of post-translational modification research, and then now I'm working on like virus phage display stuff. And my OP topic was, like I mentioned, non-coding RNA, so like completely out of the realm. So I went on the almost opposite way. I tried to be as far away from my thesis topic as possible because I didn't want to argue with people. But at the same time, I kept in mind my committee members, just as she was mentioning, they're all biology-related fields. So even if I talked about something in that realm, they're gonna know what I'm talking about. So.
My research is chemical imaging of atmospheric aerosols, and my OP was geochemically sourcing Nepalese gunflints.
I do research on cyclopropionation using transition metal catalysts, so I'm making 3-member carbon rings, and my OP was on benzene to pyridine transmutation, that is taking a carbon out of benzene and simply replacing that with a nitrogen without changing anything else, using aluminum-1 as a catalyst, which is a really funky thing, and it's gross, but that's what I was pitching.
I work on alkane dehydrogenation, and I also work on our directed hydrogenation project. So a lot of nanoparticle catalysis. I think my OP topic was fairly similar, actually. So I was looking at using a different type of material, but it was still a nanoparticle catalyst, and then I was doing stereoselective, or not stereoselective. I was doing another form of hydrogenation, but looking at like a chemoselective type instead. So fairly similar, but different enough that Christina said this.
Okay, so my research is involves more mass spectrometry imaging of bioanalytes, but I did my OP on prototyping a device, a sensor device made of aptamers, single-strand DNA, and that's going to be used for diabetic-related disease biomarker detection. So that's more analytical, I guess.
Yeah, so it kind of gives you like the varying nature of like, okay, how close was this actually to my research? Because similar thing to Mishvika, mine was, I do mass spectrometry research on lipids, and then my OP was voltammetry on drugs. So very general. So any other questions? Again, I have a list if we don't have any. Okay. So 2 of the ones that people always do want to know, because we heard a little bit about it, but how long was your oral exam? Because again, we're going to have a little bit of a difference here because we have that now it's a mandatory research presentation. I guess actually, did you get to present your research? Yes or no? Just like raise your hand.
Yeah, I did. I had 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
I didn't even get to.
Similar.
I didn't even get to present mine as a side note.
I
So
think it's expected of me as an organic person.
mhm. And that's the thing. Some divisions expected versus not expected. Again, now you have to do it, but
It's nice. You put in like all the work to make a nice presentation and you get to show it off. Yeah.
Anyway, you have to make those slides, so.
yeah, yeah, that's not changing basically. But so then, how long was the oral exam, like ish? Was it a full like, oh, took the whole 2 hours, or was it like, it was done in an hour?
Mine was an hour and a half, so I ended pretty early. And it was like kind of, I was kind of like worried because I was like, oh no, I bombed it. But then I came back and I was like, oh no, you passed unconditional. I was like, oh, nice. And then I just sat down and we talked about other things like my research and stuff like that while my professor was out of the room. So.
Mine was, I think, almost 2 hours, but one of my committee members is on a like project we're doing for research, so like some of that was just like discussing research stuff for a paper. It got a little weird.
With discussion included, I think about an hour and a half, which for organic, I think is quite long. I think Ryan Altman was kind of giving me a glare after an hour, so. I feel like a lot of my lab mates talk about like 45 minutes to like 60 minutes being more typical for something like organic, but it ranges quite a bit for sure, so I was on the longer end.
I was an hour and a half. It didn't feel like an hour and a half. It felt really fast.
It does feel really fast.
I don't think, like, my personal experience, we didn't talk about, like, my own research at all. The whole thing was just talking about the OP, and then you leave the room, and then you come back, and your PI leaves the room. But it was quick after that, after I was finished.
Yeah.
Mine was 1 hour, 45 minutes, I would say, except my research stuff.
And did you guys have to skip or rush through any of your OP? Because like I had to literally skip 2/3 of my OP because there were so many questions. So.
Luckily, no, I didn't. I was able to present all of it fairly quickly. Because even to like near the end, a lot of it was they knew, so they're like, oh, we know this. Go to the next slide. Go. Okay.
I didn't have to skip anything.
I didn't have to skip, but I was told to kind of pick up the pace a bit in the last like quarter, third-ish thereabouts, and I blanked.
Yeah, I didn't skip anything. Most of my discussion was at the beginning, so during like the background section of your OP is where I had the most, I guess, like essential knowledge type questions, and then as you went through, I had less questions.
Yeah, I think I had to skip 2 slides on AM2 because my first slide was pretty self-explanatory, and then I'm like, okay, I missed it. I can skip this part.
Yeah.
How do you fight the urge to procrastinate?
It's the anxiety.
That's me.
Yeah, schedule it as soon as you can, and then like work in reverse and build yourself a schedule.
Then you have no choice.
Schedule your practice sessions earlier than your OP, so you have to have slides done for your practice sessions. Ask people to read your written document at a certain date, so that you have to have a written document by a certain date.
Yeah. I would also say if like scheduling doesn't really work for you, doing endless wheel of procrastination, where like you have research that I assume you want to procrastinate on. So procrastinate on your research or like your TA stuff by working on your OP. When you get sick of the OP, because you will get sick of your OP, procrastinate on that by doing research. Just
it
keep
works.
the wheel going.
It works.
I didn't really procrastinate. Well, procrastinate. I don't know. Once I had like a topic figured out, I just kind of worked continuously for a month and a half, 2 months in August, and I really didn't even do a lot of research in that time. I just kind of went on in that. But to each their own. My lab mate did everything in his in a few weeks, so everyone's different.
And I think part of it too plays into how much you actually enjoy the topic you've selected, because like I haven't gotten to talk about forensics in years, and so I chose forensics and I was like, I'm so excited, so I didn't want to procrastinate. So the closer you can get to something that actually excites you, the better that is.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, if you don't like your topic, change it ASAP. Because I was procrastinating on that for so long, and I wish I would have changed it sooner, so I would have given more time to research my new topic. So another thing that helps for sure is like, setting yourself deadlines. I literally signed up for a class because in my brain, I'm like, I don't want to get an F. But for some reason, my brain didn't click like, oh, if I fail the OP, I'm gonna get out. Like my brain was still like, that's fine. But like if I see an F on the transcript, that in my brain is like, no, this is bad. I need to get an A in this class for to prepare me for the OP. So it's like that really forced me to not procrastinate.
I also just like on a scheduling note, if you have a conference that you're going to, when you're gonna like around the time that you're gonna be doing your OP, schedule your OP before the conference because it really sucks to go from OP brain to, oh no, I have to prepare like posters or presentations for a conference and then get back into OP brain.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
How far out did you start scheduling professors actually? Because personally, I had to email them in like August and I got them scheduled for end of October.
I tried to schedule in early August. They all told me, email me in September when full schedules are finalized.
Yeah. I think I finalized my schedule maybe like a month before it because like it's very hard to reach out to professors. One of them, I actually had to go to their office and be like, does this time work for you? And they're like, yeah, just schedule it.
Another thing is like, what I did is I did like a set of dates for them to set aside in like early September of like, this is the range when the OP is going to be happening. And then when we were like a month out, I was like, okay, this is the range that works for you back then. What is the specific time in this range that works for you now?
When to meet is great. Just
Yeah,
give
when
them
to
a
meet
2
is
to 3 week
amazing.
range and just go, here you go.
I think I started scheduling in early, or trying to schedule in early August for a presentation in early October, and I remember it being really clunky. Like the the like Doodle poll link just didn't work for a bunch of people, and I didn't notice it for like weeks, and it was really bizarre. So most of it got finalized in like mid to late August, I want to say.
I think I got an email from the department that was like, you need to schedule your OP because we're also scheduling final exams.
Oh, yeah.
And there's not going to be space for you to take your OP. And that really freaks me out. And I think I scheduled mine before a lot of people even though we got that email. But yeah, I think I did a when to meet for like the 2 weeks around when I wanted to do mine. And then luckily I had, I think, 2 days that worked, but I was able to email the department and figure out like what spaces were available for those times.
I scheduled my meeting in mid-August, and I had my presentation at the end of October.
Yes, it's really like a 2 month, like 1 to 2 month like lead time. So don't wait too long for that because they have so many things to go to.
Yeah.
Getting them here for this was already a project.
I actually have 2 questions. The first one, if you are a first and you are planning to take your second year senior on a specific task, would you recommend to have your OP on the fall semester or after that? 2 weeks.
I'd say OP in the fall, regardless of when your seminar is, because you have the you have more schedule flexibility during the summer to like do the background literature than you do in like fall semester if you're going to do your OP in the spring. So like, and then seminar, you can do the seminar in like 2 weeks. It's kind of not a whole lot of time commitment.
So, I think it depends on your schedule. Like I know some people like to do it in the spring because maybe in the fall they're TAing and they don't want to take that. Like, okay, I'm TAing, I have my research, I have to go to a conference, so I already have done in the spring. So it depends on the person.
Just keep in mind the departmental guidelines that were discussed earlier. If you weren't here for that, they're in the slides, they're in the handbook, etc., etc. So read those.
My second question is, if you are working on a remote project and you are cooperating on another project that is not related to your first, do you think it's okay if you have
No.
Not even touch on that, no.
Yeah. Because it's still technically like you're working on it.
My
Yeah.
PI said if your students like consider a master's degree, you should also avoid doing what was the topic of your master's degree as your OP.
Because it's meant to be like a kind of like a test of like, hey, can you synthesize like new information basically? Like, because then I had to learn all about cyclic voltammetry, which I hadn't thought about in like 5 years. So
It's a test of if your idea will work. It's a test of like how many formulae that you have.
most OPs will not work. They will tell you that straight out. Like 99% of OPs will not work. It's just the thing of like, hey, can you actually synthesize information?
I even, like, if you had a senior thesis or something in undergrad, I'd also, like, stay clear of that. Just because, again, they want to see that you can come up with a new idea.
And it's the thing of if it's something that you've worked on before, like with undergrad sorts of things, they're gonna expect more of you. Is the thing is they're like, oh well, you did this in undergrad, so you should know everything about this topic then. So.
Slight extension of that,
Mhm.
NSFGRP paper, with that expanding a topic that you wrote up for original proposal for that, is that a terrible idea?
How much did Suzanne help you?
I did it in undergrad.
Then that's maybe okay.
I would say still no, but more hesitantly than the other.
Yeah.
Talk to your advisor.
I think I had something like that where I was considering doing that. But my rationale was that for the NSFGRP, that's something that I was told you should be right as if you are going to do that based on your own existing research as well. So by tangentially, it is related to your research. So I would still say no.
Yeah, it depends. Like, if it's like very unrelated to the research that you're currently doing, and like you didn't really start any of the research, like actual work on it, I'd say possibly fair game. Yeah.
I might be worried though, as I mentioned, like they will make it hard for you because they're like, oh, you did this already, and so they're gonna expect way more out of you. So
if it is something that like you've already kind of done, make sure that you are the smartest person in the room on it. Like,
yeah.
I did my like archaeomaterial stuff. I double majored in anthropology, so I could answer any question that the chemist asked me about anthropology.
We'll go with you first, yeah.
Honestly,
That's true.
Yeah.
Your PI will by default.
Yeah.
I don't think your committee would share.
Your PI knows. Your committee can ask Hoffman for your entire transcript and like an FBI background check. But like something with stuff that you've already done, you're probably going to slip up during a Q&A of like, and just like mention that you've done this before, and they will clock that, and then they will start pressing you more. And that's like,
I'll give him an inch.
yeah, it's a risk that's unnecessary. It's tempting, like, you have more background on it, so like it's a step up, but like it's a risk and they can like target you for it. Yeah.
And like that was something that I had to deal with because I decided to do something in forensics, my undergrad degree, and research was in forensics on drugs, so therefore it was like, okay, but it was completely unrelated to what I was doing, but it was the thing of like, okay, they expect me to know, okay, what is the structure, like, I'm analytical, by the way, the structural difference between fentanyl, norfentanyl, cocaine, etc. Like, why are these different? Why do they react this way? So it's a thing of like, I put myself in that position. So just, if you're gonna do that, be ready to be like, yeah, I'm doing this to myself, basically. So yeah, what was your question?
Did any disasters happen during your opinion? And how did you tackle that?
I had to present.
Which, by the way, if any of you have to go, it is 1:45. Feel free to leave, but if you can stay, feel free if you're willing. So.
I would say for me, the worst thing that happens is like you mess up on stating something because like you're just off the roll. If that happens, like acknowledge that you said something wrong and then like take a breather and then restate like what the actual answer is. Because they did catch me on that. They're like, wait, but you said this different earlier. And I was like, oh, I misspoke. So I took a step back, I took a breather, and I was like, I meant to say it in this order, sorry. And then they said, oh, that's no worries, sorry, it's okay, but then they made me explain it further, but I was able to like tackle that. So it was very like, it happened a lot, especially in my OP, but the main takeaway is like to not dive into, because you're gonna make mistakes. Just like take a step back and really like analyze the next thing you're gonna say. So.
My committee had you explain FMAP protection, and I've never done that before, and that was one thing I hadn't reviewed, and it was like pulling teeth. That was pretty bad. Ryan Altman was getting pretty sick of me towards the end of that. But that's just like a fundamental knowledge thing that, again, like when you during your presentation, you should know everything. So that was on me for not having reviewed that, but otherwise it was okay.
I had a myriad of tech issues because one of my committee members was in Germany, so it was like a hybrid thing. And I set up an entire new desktop in the presentation room because nothing was working.
No, the
disasters happen. Yeah,
that's good.
And that was like pulling teeth, but like aside from that, it was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess like my disaster was the fact that like Julia was on my committee, and she knows like electrochem sort of stuff, and so just be aware of what your professors are kind of an expert in and not their normal field, because I had a figure in my OP that was like basic V equals IR sort of thing, but my brain was not there in that moment. I was explaining what the figure was showing, blah, 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 about to move on, and she says, no, you're interpreting that wrong, and I went, but this, and she went, no, I don't think so, because every paper I've read says this, but then Scott later on jumped in and was like, actually, let's go back to basics. So it was kind of the thing of like, just that moment of basically me being told in the middle of my OP, no, you're wrong, and I'm like, okay, so.
Yeah. I would also like to piggyback off what I also like didn't know how to answer some questions, and I was very lucky because some of my committee members were like really like dog walking me to the answer, and it was very nice. So because like I did know it, but like the way they phrase it, they're trying to confuse. They do really try to like pick apart like what you're saying and like really test you. Like, do you fully understand what you're really talking about? Or even they do try to confuse you. So.
They're looking for your failure point. It's the thing. Like, they're going to eventually ask a question that you're not going to know the answer to, and that is the point of their questions. They are genuinely curious, but they're trying to find your failure point.
Yeah.
So just expect that.
Yeah.
And like one of the things with the OP is they're also sort of testing you of like, what do you do when you don't have when you don't have the answer already? Like, can you in the moment answer their questions if you're not prepared for it?
And the best guess is okay.
Yeah.
It shows you're thinking about it.
Yeah. So as professional as you possibly can, giving your best hypothesis or your best justification for what happened. That's a lot of what you want to see.
Yeah. And sometimes they will ask you a question, you will give the right answer, but it's a question that has multiple right answers and it's not the one they were looking for. So like, I had a TOF mass spectrometer in it, and the question was like, why use a TOF? And I'm like, well, it's the cheapest way to get high resolution. And that's the right answer to the question. The question my committee member was looking for was acquisition speed.
If you have a good committee, though, they'll already be friends with each other, and they'll just talk amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
you just sit there for like 5 minutes, like.
Yeah, you get like a little break, basically.
Yeah. I got lucky here. Iota, Ryan Altman, and Mark Lipton were all really chummy throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, Scott and Julia had like a little discussion for a minute. I was like, okay, I get a break. Cool.
Okay, I can breathe first.
Yeah, if anyone needs to go, feel free. It is 1:50, but if you still have questions, you can stay. Feel free to ask. Yeah, go ahead.
So we should not we should at least away from that. So for OP, is there anything like that we didn't have or we should not do because previous experience?
Well, I think if you, sorry to like kind of jump over you guys. I think if you know one of your group mates did a certain topic, obviously don't do that topic. But other than that, because we don't get like a list or anything of topics that people have done, so.
Yeah, if you know someone's done the OP, don't do it. Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, it's a golden.
I had my lab mates send me like their old OP drafts that I was able to get a hand of.
Which you're welcome to do that for presentations and drafts. Like you can read ours and everything.
Yeah. Nothing I really had overlap with them anyway, so that was fine. My lab mate kind of did something a little similar to what I was pitching, and that one was of concern to me, but I was reassured that was mostly okay.
It's like an analytical. A lot of us do like lateral flow assays, so if you press one of those, that's fine. They're a little tired of them, but.
The topic can be similar, that's okay.
Yeah.
As long as the whole idea is not.
Yeah.
And that's very like uncommon.
Yeah. The other thing too is you'll be told that your project should have a high likelihood of success the way that you set it up, which kind of conflicts with, or is in conflict with it being totally novel. So I think there's kind of a little bit of a spectrum that you can go between safety and novelty. I think I went a bit too much into novelty, but it worked out anyway.
And it's the thing of like the novelty can either result from like, hey, here's this big new idea, it's a whole new thing, or you can go, hey, there's all these little things that I think if I shove them together, it's going to create a new novel thing, and that's going to kind of change, the expectation of how much knowledge you're going to need to have in particular subjects.
Yeah. You need to get a good handle though of how dense your ideas ending up being too. Like in hindsight, I think I had like 2 projects in there that I could have just focused on one. And I think I got a little bloated and they pointed that out. So if you feel like you're not able to dwell on a topic for as long as you should, then maybe take it as a sign to narrow it down a bit, or at least pitch it as like, if this works, there's a whole bunch of other stuff I'd like to do, but baby steps will be the first thing.
A great place for novelty is like look at 2 very different fields and see like where one field has the problems and where another field has the solutions. So for my stuff, the anthropologists have a pile of gun flints, and you can kind of sort them by color, but it's flint, it's all gray. But analytical chemistry has the ability to look at atoms, and so you can sort of just like stick it in, and it works.
Yeah, that's a good point. For like the organic side, I had a lot of Mark Levin papers which were focused on these sorts of molecular editing, adding or deleting carbons, and I found an inorganic paper where they use aluminum to do that sort of reaction, and it seemed like they had never talked to each other before, so that was kind of the conceit of that paper. And then like a week or 2 before my OP, Mark Levin made a science paper that cited that same paper. I was like, there's no way I'm thinking. It was not what I was proposing, but I'm like, okay, he's reading my mind. Like, we're on the same page here, so that's great.
I saw some hands in this general area, yeah.
So, on that subject, like, research moves pretty fast these days. Let's say you're decently far into your OP and then a very similar idea gets published.
It depends on how far you're in, but overall, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I know at least a few people who have had their ideas prepared. I think my lab mate hated him. I think he had that happen to him, where he's like, I have this whole thing prepared and I can't do anything, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like, if it happens, cite them, like, mention that this is something that has happened, but also, like, you have your, like, 1 page due 2 months before your OP or whenever. So, like, you have physical evidence that this was your novel idea before this paper was published.
Yeah.
Like,
the committee isn't evil. Well, they'll should understand. They should totally understand that sort of circumstance.
And this is part of the like conceit of the OP of this is an idea that is possible based on the literature that exists. And there are other scientists out there who are reading the same literature in the same field, probably seeing the same holes that you're seeing. And they're probably also working on filling.
That is a good
You
note.
use it as validation, really.
And that is a very good note, actually, to bring up. I wanted to mention that. Your committee members will do a quick Google search of your topic to find out, hey, did you see this paper that you should have found? Because I Googled it in 2 seconds. So just be aware of the literature surrounding your topic.
What is like, I have a suggestion. You've always have a backup plan. You're gonna propose your experiments, right? To put in your aim. Okay, what if this experiment fails? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna validate this experiment? So have your backup plans ready for them.
So how far you go into this, like, I'm gonna do this, and if it works, we'll do this, if it works, we'll do, like, at some point, there has to be a limit to how many times you take. If the previous step works, you go to the next step.
Don't go more than 3 layers deep.
Yeah, I did like 2 or 3
I did.
ones for kind of each step.
Yeah.
I think I just went 2 layers deep. I just was like, if it works, I'll go this way. If it doesn't work, I'll go this way. And then I didn't really go beyond that. So
The rest of that more so is like that kind of on the fly question of like, hey, can you think of like, if neither of these work, like, what else would you try kind of thing?
Yeah. Just sort of on that, for a lot of proposals, you like have a funding request, but sometimes you don't get fully funded. So a lot of PIs are going to ask, what part of your OP are you going to cut if you don't get full funding?
yeah. And a lot of that too, like the dictating that flow is all dependent on what you title your aim as. So for example, if you titled your aim interaction between 1 and 2, right? You can say, oh, 1 and 2 do react. What if 1 and 2 don't react? Then I'll say 1 and 3. But then you're not going to dive more into why you think 1 and 3. That can be another aim, or even like a different entirely project, right? So.
Any last minute burning questions? Because then we're going to clean up. But like they've iterated, and feel free to raise your hand while I'm talking. Like all the professors have been iterating throughout this whole thing. Use your group members. I recommend 2 practices before your actual OP, personally.
I did too.
Yeah, I was like,
honestly 3 now, 2 for OP, 1 for research.
That's a good point, actually, yeah. But yeah, so it's kind of like, because the first one's going to be like, hi, the order of your slides is horrible, let's fix this. And then the second one is like, okay, now here's all the little questions we're going to ask, sort of thing. But yeah, and they genuinely mean your group members should be the meanest people to you over the committee. It's the nicer way to do it, honestly.
Yeah.
So. But yeah.
This hasn't been said, I don't know, well, since I've been here, it might have been said earlier. Don't make fake data. Like, if you have an example plot, don't just like make a weird example plot. Find a plot that's similar in the literature that you can use as an example.
Yeah.
I literally emailed a professor in Canada being like, hi, do you have the actual plot for this from your paper? Because it wasn't in the supplementary or in the paper, but they mentioned it. I was like, I desperately need this plot. Can you give it to me? So that is also allowed as a side note. But okay, cool. So we're going to get cleaned up. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to email like myself and I can disseminate things. Feel free to email the professors, etc. And thank you for coming.